Everyone kindly take your seats. We are about to begin. And welcome back. We hope you enjoyed your lunch. And if you're just joining us for the first time, Bombini to the Common Good Conference. To ease us back in with a bit of rhythm and energy, let us begin the afternoon session with a musical performance. Our performer is 9 years old and already sings across a range of genres from mariachi to calypso. He has won several prizes, including Rey di Dande, Rey di Mariachi, Rey di Tumba, Rey di Calypso, and today he will perform his winning Calypso of the year 2024, titled Dunanos Amor, Give Us Love. Please put your hands together for Javion Besselink.
Buon tardi, duende. Bendición. DJ Lasepami. Aruba, this is Calypso time with all my heart. Lo que me pide un taopi, date un tiki atención. Hey mayorna, cora dunanos amor, mi corazón chita sinti, mi tamete un gorma y valor.
We are children of God. We have lost it. Educate us well. No need to stress it.
Mi voy uno cambia tema, mi tapita tela no tira mi abuela.
Dunanos amor.
Duna,
Dunanos amor. Dunanos amor, Mayona. Dunanos amor.
show them.
Show we kiss them love.
the kids them love. Give the kids them love and caring. Show the kids them love. Donald Sapal, Daki, bendición. God bless you all.
Yes, let's give it up one more time for Javion Besselink. Together with his lovely mother this afternoon, thank you for joining us. So now from rhythm and expression, we now turn to reflection and travel all the way to Scotland for this next virtual conversation. Dr. Ian McGilchrist is a British psychiatrist, philosopher, and writer best known for his influential work on how the human brain shapes our perception of the world. He is the author of The Master and His Emissary, The Divided Brain and the Making of the Western World, a wide-ranging exploration of how the left and right hemispheres of the brain attend to the reality in very different ways, and how an over-reliance on narrow analytical thinking can distort our understanding of ourselves and our world. His work bridges neuroscience, philosophy, and culture, offering deep insight into how our ways of thinking affect meaning, creativity, and social life. He continues to write and lecture internationally from his home in Scotland, from where he joins us virtually today. So please give a warm welcome, as you can see him on the screen, Dr. Ian McGilchrist.
Are you hearing me?
We can hear you, sir.
Oh, good, good, good. I just wish I were with you in the sunshine of the Caribbean instead of in the dark of the Hebridean winter, but this is the best I can do. And I think that I've got something to say that should be relevant to the topic, the very important topic of your conference, because it's about the way in which our brains construe the world. They effectively put together a picture of the world, and they do so in two different ways in each of the hemispheres. You may have heard various things about hemisphere differences, and heard also that it is pop psychology and not very reliable. But believe me, I've been working on this for about 30 years, and I've written a couple of thousand pages on it, and nobody has said that I'm wrong, to point out that the two hemispheres do see the world in importantly different ways. Of course, we both use both of them all the time, that is right, but when we come to think about things and debate them, we tend to go rather rigidly into one or the other mode of apprehension of the world, because although both are needed, they are, in essence, somewhat contradictory. So first of all, why is the brain divided? It seems odd, doesn't it, that the brain that makes connections in order to understand things, and its power comes from its connections, should be massively divided down the middle. Why? Why are the two halves of the brain asymmetrical, both in structure and in function? It would seem if you just needed a bit more brain, you would expand symmetrically. And why is the rather small band of fibers that connects the two hemispheres at their base, known as the corpus callosum, why is it very largely concerned with inhibiting the other hemisphere? Now, those three questions wouldn't go away for me when I was studying medicine. I came to medicine later in life. I'd been interested in philosophy mainly, philosophy and literature. And it struck me that in order to understand the mind-body problem, I really ought to become a doctor and specialize in the area where mind and brain meet, which is what I did. Anyway, I researched all this, and I'm going to give you just the headline results of why the brain is divided and why that should matter to you today. So there's a lot more to say, but forgive me for giving you the elevator pitch. The evolutionary reason why the two halves of the hemisphere operate separately is that every living creature has to do two, as it were, paradoxically different things at the same time. One is to eat, and the other is to stay alive. And of course, that doesn't sound difficult to you in the luscious surroundings of Aruba in 2026. But for most creatures that have lived, it is a problem, because in order to eat, to get food, they have to pay a very precise, targeted attention to something that they know that they need, and get it very quickly, and grab it and amass it. And so important is this, that one whole half of our brains, but not just our brains, the brains of every creature that we've looked at, is devoted to this process. It has a very sharply focused, targeted attention to a detail that it already knows and it wants to get and grab. It is the hemisphere that gives us control and power and wealth, the getting of stuff, the manipulating of stuff. But if that's all it's doing, the creature won't last very long, because at the same time, it has to have precisely the opposite attention to the world. So it has to have an open, vigilant, sustained attention to all the rest, to see the predator, to see its mate, to see its offspring, to be watching, to be really understanding what's going on, while the other half is just getting on with getting lunch. So you have these two parts of your brain, one of them very, very basic. It's not a very sophisticated organ. It just allows you to think in pieces, bits and pieces, and grab them and get them. And the whole other half of your brain is saying, hey, but that doesn't mean anything. What does this all mean? You have to see the whole picture. Now, what I say is attention changes the world. So attention changes what you find in the world, and what you find in the world changes the kind of attention you pay in future. So if you think of everything as a mechanism, you only see the mechanical parts of the world. And that convinces you that that's the right way to pay attention. So next time you pay attention as if it were a machine. And hey presto, you find there is a machine, because you can only see now the mechanical parts of it. But believe me, the organism, the giant organism to which you belong, indeed the whole cosmos, is far, far more complicated than anything the left hemisphere ever dreamt of. Just behind my house, there is a mountain here. I can actually still see it in the dusk from my window here. And what is that mountain? Its name in Norse means the sloping rock. And its modern name is derived from that. So what do we know? We know that the Norsemen who came here 1,000 years ago used it as a landmark to save lives, because it was a mark that this was a particularly treacherous bay to steer clear of. The Picts who lived here before 2,000 years ago, before the Norsemen came, thought of it as the home of the gods. So for them, it was a very different thing. In the 18th century, people came and painted it and drew it because of its beautiful shape and form and color and vegetation. In the 19th century, people got particularly interested in its geology, because it just happens to be a remarkably good example of columnar basalt formation. So for them, that's what it was. For a speculator, therefore, it's dollars, potentially. And for a physicist, well, it's 99.99% empty space, and the other 0.01%, well, don't ask me what it is, because we don't really know. So which of these is the real mountain? I say all of them are the real mountain. So all of them show an aspect of reality that is called forth by the kind of attention you show. So when you attend to the world in one way, you find something of a certain kind and you do actions that conform to that. When you attend to it differently, you see something differently, and so your behavior towards it changes. So can I just give you a very short rundown on the sort of things that are very different? The left hemisphere prefers things that are known to things that are new. So it likes the familiar because it's lunch again, but it doesn't actually want to go, well, it could be a seed, could be a bit of grit, could be a rabbit, could be I don't know. I mean, so it's just going for it and going, that's what we know, that's what we need. It prefers certainty, whereas the left hemisphere the right hemisphere understands possibility. It prefers fixity. It's easier to grab things when they're fixed. Whereas the right hemisphere sees that everything actually is constantly flowing, changing, developing, evolving, and that is its nature. The left hemisphere, because of its narrow 3 degrees out of the 360-degree arc of attention, sees only bits. The right hemisphere sees the whole. The left hemisphere sees what is explicit, but immediately is obvious. The right hemisphere understands the implicit, and that's not something secondary or inferior. Pretty much everything that matters in this world has to be implicit if it's not going to be destroyed. If you try to make explicit what love is, what God is, what nature is, what art means, what friendship is, what a myth, a story, a ritual means, what a great symphony means, you cannot make it explicit without destroying it. The things that are explicit are what are in the dishwasher manual, necessary but hardly very startling pieces of information. So on top of that, the left hemisphere tends to take things out of context. It abstracts them, and it produces generalities. It types things of a kind. You know, in the world we're in now, we're never really individuals. We are formulated by machines that we must respond in certain ways because people that are of our type do this, that, and the other. But actually, I never find that any of the boxes I'm asked to tick represents anything real that ever happens in my life. We are, in fact, all unique. In fact, everything that exists is unique. And of course, we have to group them together for practical reasons, but we shouldn't forget that they are actually ultimately unique. And it's in their uniqueness that they have their great value. The left prefers quantity. More of it, better. More lunch, better. More power enables me to be more destructive than I already am. Quality is in the right hemisphere. It sees the differences. The left hemisphere lumps everything together. Don't ask me questions about quality. The right hemisphere sees quality as the important thing. The left hemisphere, as you would gather from what I've described, sees the world as a mechanism, inanimate, whereas the right hemisphere sees things as deeply alive. The left hemisphere is absurdly optimistic because it knows everything. I mean, like all stupid people, they think they know everything. The more you know, the more you realize how very little you know. And the left hemisphere is like that idiot. It is very optimistic. It says, well, we'll sort it all out. Don't worry, we'll have the power in 3 years to, clear up all the mess we're making. The right hemisphere is much more realistic. The left hemisphere, and this is a quite important one, though it may not sound it to you, is never really dealing with the actual presence of the world and the things that are in it, but always with a representation, which literally means being present again after the fact when it's no longer present. And so it deals with images, icons, screens, two-dimensional ideas that get between us and the vivid reality of something. And this is something that, if you know the works of the poet Wordsworth, he lamented that as a young person, the mountains, the lakes, the waterfalls, the streams were alive to him. He experienced them in awe and wonder. But as he grew older, they become automatically processed by the left hemisphere as, a picturesque scene, which is not really the same as what you experience when you feel the sublime. So if I can sum up the kind of phenomenology, in other words, the kind of experiential world that the two hemispheres give, the left hemisphere gives, as I say, a representation, a schema, a map, a theory. And it's made up of isolated things. The things, moreover, are familiar, predetermined, fixed. They're bits, fragments, decontextualized, disembodied, meaningless, abstract, generic in nature, infinitely reproducible, quantifiable, mechanical, and inanimate. And the future is a fantasy under our control. Meanwhile, the right hemisphere, the one that we should be paying attention to, realizes that nothing is entirely certain or predictable, ultimately, that things are ultimately interconnected and essentially relational. They exist in their relations. Take them out of their relations, you've altered what you've got. They're not fixed, but they are flowing. What exists are wholes. The parts are just an artifact of our process of breaking them down. Meaning is implicit. This is a world of uniqueness where quality matters more than quantity. It is essentially animate. It is a feeling world. And the future is a product of realism to the right hemisphere, not denial. Now, there's so much I could say about that, but I realize that time is limited. So I'm just going to finish by doing a thought experiment. In the book I wrote called The Matter with Things, I went into the philosophy of the difference between these, and I hope you might find it really interesting about the nature of reality. And in an earlier book called The Master and His Emissary, I set out a bit of this at the start of my thinking about the difference between the two sides of the brain. And I came to the conclusion that the world we live in now is very much dominated by a sort of left hemisphere mode of thinking. And it has not always been like that. So I dared, in the second half of The Master and His Emissary, to go back to the Greeks and the Romans and work forwards to the postmodernists and look at the different ways in which different movements in the Western world's idea of who we are, what we're doing here, and what the world is, and see how they related to the two hemispheres. And to cut a long story short, there have been alternations. And when things have flourished, both hemispheres have worked together. But the left hemisphere, being arrogant, being ignorant, thinking it knows everything, is always shutting up the right hemisphere. It wants its own simple story, which often enables it just to grab stuff, but it won't make it happy. It won't make the world flourish. It won't, in fact, produce anything other than ultimately a disaster. Now, if the left hemisphere world is the one we're living in, what would it look like? Well, first of all, there'd be loss of the broader picture. Knowledge would be replaced by information, tokens, pieces of paper, tick boxes, representations. There'd be a loss of the concepts of skill and judgment, which are too human and too subtle and too real. Everything would be mechanical. It would be abstract. And things would be simultaneously abstract and reified. In other words, turned into just lumpen matter. As I often say, there is nothing just material about matter. It is infused with something spiritual. Bureaucracy would have a field day. Bureaucracy, according to the great sociologist Peter Berger, has the following qualities. There are procedures that are known. Anonymity, organizability, predictability, justice reduced to mere equality, explicit abstraction. I wonder if you can recognize any of those popping up their heads in the world we're in now. There'd be loss of the sense of uniqueness. There'd be quantity as the only criterion. Things would be either this or that. The left hemisphere can't understand that it might be true in different senses of two things that are different at the same time, that actually it's both this and that. Whereas the left hemisphere says, no, it can't be both and, it has to be either or. And sometimes things are either or, so we need that way of thinking, but we also need both and. In fact, if I can just put this to you without leaving you feeling completely lost, we need both either or and both and, not either or both and. Reasonableness, that rather rare thing these days, would be replaced by rationalizations, logical schemata. There'd be a general failure of that very uncommon thing these days, common sense. Systems would be designed purely to maximize utility. There'd be a loss of social cohesion, depersonalization, paranoia, and lack of trust, because the left hemisphere doesn't like it if it's not completely in control. So we'd have CCTV cameras on all the street corners. There'd be data banks of, DNA across the whole of society. There'd be need, in other words, for total control. There'd be a great deal of anger and aggression, because you may have heard that the left hemisphere is down to earth and unemotional. No, that's not true at all. It's actually very irrational and very emotional, and it's particularly prone to anger. In fact, the emotion that most strongly lateralizes its anger, and it lateralizes to the left hemisphere. And because it's unwilling to accept responsibility, everything would be someone else's responsibility. People would be unwilling to take responsibility for who they are, what they've done, and get on with that, which is one of the tasks of a psychiatrist, by the way, not to tell people that it's all your mother's fault, but to say, your mother did the best job she could. You get on with what you've got now. Art would become conceptual. Visual art would lack a sense of depth, and there'd be distorted or bizarre perspectives. Music would be reduced to little more than rhythm, because that's the only bit that the left hemisphere really understands. Melody and harmony, for most of us, are mainly in the right hemisphere. Language would become diffuse, excessive, lacking in concrete reference, rather like the lever arch files of procedures that I used to keep by my bedside in case I was troubled by insomnia. There'd be a deliberate undercutting of the sense of awe or wonder, because the left hemisphere, what do you mean? We'll understand it next. It's all explicable, I'll show you. Flow would just be the sum of an infinite series of pieces. There'd be a discarding of the tacit forms of knowing, which are so important to us, and everything would be reduced to a network of small, complicated rules. That is a quotation from de Tocqueville in America in 1837, a network of small, complicated rules. The left hemisphere was beginning to exert itself. And we'd all be spectators rather than actors in the world, as Descartes proudly called himself. And all this, if we were in that world, all this would be accompanied by a dangerously unwarranted optimism. Well, all I can say is, thank God we don't live there. I'll stop there. I can't see you, but I'm hoping something got across. I'm open to discussion.
Thank you so much, Dr. McGilchrist. I understood you wanted to do like a test on our left or right brain in the audience.
No.
That's what they
That's a
told me
very
in the back.
No, that's a very left hemisphere kind of thing to do.
Right.
It's just what it
I'll
would
let
like.
I'll let him know.
Oh, let's have. Exactly. But it's rather sad. I can't see any of you. And when I normally speak, I like to see people smiling and nodding, and and some of them scowling and sitting there with
Well,
arms folded. But
no.
I can't see you. But just talk to me if you want to.
Yes, no, everybody just had lunch, so everybody's very happy and have been engaging their left and right brain, listening to you. And the Prime Minister of Aruba will now share a few words with you.
Okay, thank you. I think after lunch is when people go to sleep normally, but
Good afternoon, Professor McGilchrist. On behalf of the community of Aruba and on behalf of a full hall here in the Convention Center at the Renaissance, we would like to thank you for your contemplation on the importance of thinking with both of our hemispheres. We also recognize that in many aspects we see that our left hemisphere went into an overdrive and that we need to find ways to compensate that with reactivation of our right hemisphere to create the right balance. This conference is also a stimulation for that because we are focusing on the common good. And by focusing on the common good, we make an appeal to the conscious, to the heart, to the soul of our citizens,
Yes.
To think about others, to think about the future, to think about our nature, and to think about the creation, that when we look into the sky, we see the colors, we see the stars, we see the moon, with the awe that we need to see the creation, which will make us humble again and makes us also more open for changes that we have to realize in our community. And we definitely appreciate your contribution this afternoon because I believe that many of what you have shared with us gives us something to bring home. And naturally, there is not a button that we can turn that puts our right hemisphere more in activity in order to create a balance. But these type of conversations definitely would also help and create that stimulus. So thank you very much, and I hope you can hear the applause of the public for you here today. Thank you.
Yes. Th- Thank you. And thank you. I can't see you, but is that Mike Eamon?
That is Mr. Mike Gaiman.
Yes, yes, good. Well, thank you very much, Mike, and thank you for inviting me along. I don't know, do we have time for further discussion, or how would things better go?
Yes, we'll let the folks in the back speak to you when we get into the Q&A session, and maybe we'll see you again. If not, please enjoy the Scotland weather, and we'll enjoy the weather here. We hope to see you soon in Aruba.
Thank you very much.
So, ladies and gentlemen, if you're just joining us, welcome again to the Common Good Conference. Please remember that yesterday we had a fantastic expo event, and there are still a couple of booths available towards the back of the room. So if you have not visited them yet, you're welcome to visit them. This morning, we also had a very beautiful moment where we had a MOU signage. We're going to continue with this series of signages, this time with the Commission Bernhardstraat. So I would like to ask the representative of the Commission Bernhardstraat to join us on stage, as well as Notary Johnson to join us on the stage, and His Excellency Prime Minister of Aruba, Mike Eamon. Please join us on stage.
Testing. Bontadi, good afternoon. We are going to incorporate a foundation called Stichting Revitalization Bernhardstraat. We are confirming today, the 30th of January. I'm a notary here in Aruba, Theodore Johnson, and we have present John Matthias Hassel, Ingrid Eunice Bertilia Richardson, and Calvin Castello Despierre. And these three people will be incorporating the foundation to revitalize Bernhardstraat. The foundation is going to improve, enhance, and continue to fix the Bernhardstraat, which is one of the main thoroughfares in St. Nicholas, and we'll be incorporating it as right now. So just a final note, we have John as chairman, Ingrid as the secretary, and Calvin as treasurer. So without any further ado, we'll have this signed. I'll start with John. Thank you very much.
Maybe notary, we can stand in front here for a photo together with the commission. Yes, congratulations. Well done. And it's another example of these reflections and ideas turning into concrete commitments. Thank you very much. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we will turn to a perspective that's deeply connected to the island life, exploring how tourism and economic choices can support human development. Dr. Robertico Cruz is a professor. Whoa, go ahead. No introduction needed. I won't read your bio. No introduction needed. Dr. Robertico Cruz is a professor at UCF, Rosen College of Hospitality Management, and is widely recognized as a leading expert in tourism economics and management, with a focus on human development in small and developing economies. He is the editor of the Rosen Research Review and has authored 6 books, including Small Island and Small Destination Tourism, and A Modern Guide to Tourism Economics. A 2024 UCF Luminary Award winner, he was recognized by Stanford University as being among the top 2% of cited authors over 4 consecutive years, from 2020 through 2023. His work invites us to consider how tourism, so central to the island economies, can also be shaped in service of human development and the common good. Please welcome Aruba's own Dr. Robertico Cruz.
Good afternoon. I'm glad to be back after so long, and I would like to thank the organizers for having me here today. Thank you for the opportunity. We live in a world obsessed with scale, bigger markets, faster growth, broader reach, more volume. And yet many of the deepest failures of our time, social fragmentation, institutional fatigue, environmental collapse, are not failures of ambition. They are failures of coordination. Today I want to suggest something deliberately counterintuitive. Smallness may be one of the most powerful teachers of the common good, and I want to use Aruba to show you why. I have been asked to speak about Aruba as a living laboratory for the common good. I do not mean this romantically. I mean this analytically. Aruba is not instructive because it's perfect, or because it's exceptional, or because it's morally superior. It is instructive because it was forced early, visibly, and under restraint to confront a problem many societies postponed for decades. How do we transform individual rationality into collective well-being? To answer that question, I will weave together 3 strands of thought. Albert Hirschman on human motivation, Amartya Sen on freedom and capability, and my own work on the disciplining power of small scale and tourism as a social coordination system. What unites them is a single insight. The common good does not emerge accidentally. It must be governed. Let's start there. The common good is often treated as a moral hope, something we expect to appear once growth takes off, or markets function, or intentions improve. Aruba teaches us something more demanding. The common good is not the byproduct of prosperity, nor the residue of individual success. It is an institutional achievement. What makes Aruba analytically powerful is not that it grew, but that it learned how to scale responsibility. Individual behavior had to be translated into collective discipline, and collective discipline had to be stabilized through governance. This scaling process, rarely visible, often uncelebrated, is the real story of development. At the individual level, behavior was rational. Workers sought higher wages. Firms pursued opportunity. Investors followed global signals. Tourism developers responded to demand rather than ecological and social limits. None of this was irrational. But in a small island economy, none of it was sufficient. Smallness collapses distance. There is no buffer between cause and consequence. Wage pressures quickly erode competitiveness. Speculative behavior destabilizes trust. Unregulated tourism degrades the very foundations on which it depends. Aruba learned early and visibly and repeatedly that individual responsibility does not naturally aggregate into collective well-being. It must be structured. This realization marked a profound shift from growth as aspiration to governance as architecture. The common good stopped being a slogan and became a design problem. This is where Albert Hirschman becomes essential. Hirschman warns against what he called motivational parsimony, the idea that societies can govern as if people are motivated only by self-interest. Human beings, he argued, are also capable of loyalty, commitment, and public spiritedness. But these qualities are not automatic. They can either be cultivated or crowded out by institutions. Aruba's experience makes this clear. Institutions that assumed responsibility would emerge failed. Institutions that relied purely on coercion failed as well. What worked were arrangements that treated public spiritedness not as a moral constant, but as a capability that grows with use. Governance in Aruba became a pedagogy. It taught society how to act under constraint. Self-interest was not suppressed, it was aligned. The common good emerged not despite individual aspiration, but through its careful coordination. Here, governance functioned not as command, but as coordination made visible. And it is here that credibility enters, not as belief, not as persuasion, but as experience. Consider monetary stability. No individual actor can produce it, yet every actor depends on it. Aruba's monetary framework did not rely on extortion or fear. It aligned wage behavior, fiscal discipline, and public credibility into a single observable pattern of restraint. Credibility in this context was not declared, it was learned. People trusted the system because it behaves in ways they could recognize and rely on. Government did what it said it would do. Workers saw their expectations met rather than undermined. Businesses planned for the future and discovered that the rules did not suddenly shift beneath them. Nothing dramatic happened, and that was precisely the point. Wages didn't spike unpredictably, budgets did not spiral out of control, policy did not lurch from one direction to another. Stability was not promised, it was practiced. Over time, these repeated patterns did something subtle but powerful. They taught people how to behave. Expectations adjusted. Decisions became more measured. Responsibility stopped feeling like sacrifice and started to feel like common sense. Acting prudently made sense because everyone could see that others were doing the same. This is credibility. It didn't come from authority. It didn't come from speeches. It didn't come from moral appeals or patriotic obligation. It came from consistency, from reliability, from the quiet discipline of doing the same sensible thing again and again, even when temptation pushed otherwise. In that environment, cooperation ceased to look naive. It became rational. Trust then emerged as a shared asset, not as a sentiment, but as infrastructure. People did not trust because they were told to, they trusted because the system reduced uncertainty, honored commitments, and made long-term behavior intelligible. And that is why the common good held. It was not imposed from above, nor declared as an abstract ideal. It emerged organically, durably, from coordinated behavior repeated over time. The common good survived not because people became morally superior, not because institutions made responsible behavior the easiest, safest, and most reasonable choice. This is how coordination becomes governance. This is how governance becomes credibility. And that is how the common good becomes real. Healthcare followed the same logic. By framing health as social membership rather than charity, Aruba transformed vulnerability into collective responsibility. Education extended this logic across generations, expanding not just skills, but the capability to aspire, ensuring that today's growth did not foreclose tomorrow's freedom. This brings us to Amartya Sen. Sen asks us to rethink development not as the accumulation of income or the maximization of output, but as the expansion of real freedom, the capabilities people need to give their lives meaning. From this perspective, the common good is not about equalizing outcomes or maximizing utility. It is about enlarging what people are actually able to be and do together. Capabilities, however, do not float freely. They are relational. They are carried or constrained by institutions, by norms, by the quiet strength or fragility of governance itself. Freedom without institutional support is not empowerment, it is exposure. And governance grounded in capability expansion becomes something more than administration. It becomes the infrastructure of freedom. But here is the pivot we rarely make. Institutions do not operate in abstract. They are lived at scale. They are felt in distance and proximity, in density and familiarity, and how quickly actions reverberate through a community. Which brings us to the factor beneath everything I have said so far, scale itself. Smallness is not merely a structural condition, it is a teacher. And what it teaches relentlessly is humility. On small islands, humility is not a virtue, it is a governing logic. There is no anonymity, no place to hide mistakes. Environmental damage is visible. Social fracture is personal. Institutional failure is immediate. Arrogance is not only unethical, it is unsustainable. Small scale makes the limit undeniable. Land is finite. Water is scarce. Ecological thresholds are fragile. Fiscal errors reverberate quickly. Large societies can ignore these limits for decades. Small islands cannot. Constraint arrives early, and with it, learning. This humility is not about restraint from its own sake. It is epistemic reality. The recognition that no actor knows enough, controls enough, or stands alone enough to act without regard for others. And humility is what makes the common good governable, because it forces the most important question in public life. Not can we, but at what cost, to whom, and for how long. Nowhere was this lesson learned more forcefully than in tourism. In my research, tourism is not a sector. It is a social coordination system. It binds households, firms, ecosystems, communities, and the state into a single experiential field. Unlike manufacturing or extraction, Tourism cannot be isolated. It turns the entire society into the product. On Aruba, this reality is unavoidable. Visitors do not encounter policies or plans. They encounter lived reality. Airport, taxis, hotels, hospitals, beaches, neighborhoods, environmental quality, and social mood. Tourism becomes an unforgiving mirror. It reveals immediately whether a society has learned how to coordinate itself. This is where humility becomes necessity. Tourism punishes arrogance faster than almost any other activity. In small island context, uncoordinated rationality cannot hide. Growth without coordination destroys value. Freedom without responsibility collapses into fragility. Aruba's critical insight was learning that tourism growth without humility produces vulnerability rather than prosperity. Instead of denying limits, Aruba learned to govern through them. Humility became a strategic intelligence. This was the moment Aruba crossed the threshold from volume to value. And in doing so, Aruba learned something fundamental. High-value tourism is not produced by hotels, marketing campaigns, or branding slogans. It is produced by society itself. Tourism value does not begin at the point of consumption. It begins much earlier, in classrooms, in hospitals, in neighborhoods, and in the everyday functioning of institutions. In other words, tourism value is downstream from resident value. That phrase matters because it reverses the logic that has guided tourism development for decades. It tells us that values is not the input to the system, it is the outcome. High-value tourism does not originate where visitors arrive. It emerges later as a cumulative result of upstream social conditions, education that builds confidence, health systems that sustain dignity and energy, communities that foster trust, and institutions that work. When those foundations are strong, value follows naturally, credibly, sustainably. When they are weak, no amount of branding can compensate. This is the shift from designing destinations for tourists to cultivating societies that generate value. This reverses the dominant narrative. Tourism does not create well-being. Well-being creates tourism value. When people feel secure, respected, and capable, their natural friendliness remains intact. There is no risk of the authentic becoming performative. Cultural expression is confident, not commodified. Hospitality becomes relational, not extractive. Here again, humility proves decisive. Tourism income can substitute for governance, or it can be converted into public capability. Aruba chose conversion. It channeled revenues into health, education, infrastructure, and institutional capability. These were not residual opportunities or expenditures. They were acts of humility, recognitions that market alone cannot secure freedom, and that long-term competitiveness depends on collective investment. Through this process, tourism ceased to be merely a source of income. It became a capability-expanding system. Growth became resilience. Exposure became learning. Dependence became agency. Social fragmentation cannot be outsourced. Environmental neglect cannot be postponed indefinitely. Aruba experience shows that when tourism is governed with humility, it becomes a laboratory for the common good. It forces coordination. It rewards coherence. It converts well-being into sustained value. It makes responsibility scalable. Let me close with a core lesson. Small islands teach humility because they do not permit illusion. Tourism enforces that lesson because it exposes reality. Aruba's achievement was not simply managing tourism well. It was learning through tourism how to govern interdependence. In a world struggling with scale without stewardship, Aruba reminds us of something profoundly important. It is not abundance that produces wisdom, but constraint that is honestly faced. The lesson of Aruba is not that others should copy what it did, but that they should confront what Aruba was forced to learn. Smallness did not grant Aruba wisdom. It stripped away illusion. It collapsed the distance between action and consequence, exposed the limits of uncoordinated rationality, and made unmistakably clear that the common good is not a moral aspiration. It is an institutional task. Larger societies may enjoy the luxury of postponement, but not exemption. What small islands learn easily, others learn later, often through crisis. That lesson, patiently learned and institutionally anchored, is the true architecture of the common good. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Cruz. I am sure many of you may have questions. Please keep those, write them down, and when we go over to the Q&A session, you'll definitely have an opportunity to pose those to Dr. Cruz and the others. Our next speaker is a Dutch legal expert with long-standing ties to Aruba and the Caribbean. Trained in law and history at Leiden University, he has spent decades working in public service and legal advisory roles related to governance, legislation, and constitutional development. He played a key role in the realization of Aruba's status aparte in 1986 and later served as legal advisor to the Prime Minister of the Netherlands Antilles during the constitutional transition of the Caribbean countries within the kingdom in 2010. Since 2006, he has continued to support Aruba and Curaçao as a senior legislative consultant, particularly in the areas of maritime governance, ports, aviation, and cultural heritage. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Mr. Tim Timmers.
Let's see, yeah, it works. Ladies and gentlemen, the Prime Minister, Mr. Mike Eeman, has asked me to give a brief presentation in which the central theme of this conference, the common good, is explored from the perspective of legislation, het maken van wetten. Prime Minister Eeman would like to introduce a legal base, when needed and where possible, for the pursuance of common good. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. These words were spoken by the 17th century philosopher and mathematician René Descartes, have echoed through centuries. His bust stands still today in Castle Endegeest in Oegstgeest in the Netherlands, where he once lived. What Descartes urges us to do is timeless, to ask ourselves to reflect on the necessity and the purpose of our actions, and to ask ourselves what their consequences are for the community as a whole. That message applies broadly, but it applies in a very concrete way to my own field of work, the field of legislation. A good legislator does not deliver a draft law automatically or mechanically. A good legislator continues to question its design, its substance, and its impact. Descartes' philosophy emphasizes the power of individual reason. Yet, if a legislative drafter, a lawmaker, were to rely on individual reason alone, something essential would be missing. Responsible legislation requires more than rational design. It requires attention to what I would call the social fabric, to the human dimension. And it is precisely there that we encounter the idea of the common good. If Aruba is to give real meaning to the common good, legislation must be aimed first and foremost at the general interest, and not primarily at rules that serve sectoral or particular interests. That means that in an early stage of the legislative process, we must ask a fundamental question. Does the draft law truly reflect the common good? But I make a note at this point, particular interests, of course, deserve to be heard. They must be taken seriously, but they must never be allowed to erode the idea of the common good. Citizens may rightly expect their government to recognize specific interests without allowing any one of them to prevail without careful and principled justification. In other words, at times, individual interests or group interests may conflict with the common good. In such cases, an exception may be justified, perhaps temporarily, or only after, perhaps with a transitional arrangement, but only after careful and transparent balancing of interests. General interest, in this case the common good, and the special interests. And of course, it's almost needless to say that especially in a small island community, legislation cannot always be rigid or strictly linear. You have to weigh it in the balance and find and the outcome has to be justified. This is, and now I come to the practice of lawmaking. This is where a well-designed checklist combined with a requirement for clear reasoning and justification can be of real value. So that's before legislation is brought to Raad van Advies, Staten, etc. And such, I call it a common good checklist for new or amended legislations that helps ensure that this assessment is carried out systematically and conscientiously. Attaching such a checklist with the assessment, as I just described, when legislation is submitted to the Council of Advice and to Parliament, Raad van Advies and the Staten, is also an important contribution to transparency in the legislative process. Everyone, not only the parliamentarians, can read and think over for themselves what has been put into the balance and what the outcome has been and why. Over time, this approach, I think, will ensure that Aruban legislation becomes thoroughly, in English, imbued, doordrenkt of the concept of common good. And I think it's wise and above all practical to begin with a clearly defined package of national ordinances, Landsverordeningen, and to resist the temptation to review and revise all existing legislation at once. Even a small package to start with already demands, in the scale of Aruba, a considerable effort. It is also important to recognize that not every aspect of the common good lends itself to regulation by law. Some issues require different kinds of action, I think. Action by government, by civil society, and by the business community alike. And then we have also to look to not only to Aruba, but to the rest of the world. I come to the point of existing international treaties, and in that case, I would like to draw attention to the International Convention on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The Kingdom of the Netherlands is a party with this convention. And this convention guarantees fundamental rights that shape the daily life of citizens. The right to food, to housing, to health, to education, to social security, and to an adequate standard of living. Recent case law, even this week, the Hoge Raad der Nederlanden has made clear that the right to health also includes protection against harm caused by environmental pollution or other climate change. These treaty provisions function as guiding norms and must be implemented by each country, elk land within the kingdom, including Aruba. The Common Good Assessment, as I mentioned earlier, as part of the checklist, the new checklist, carried out. This assessment must therefore also encompass the treaties that apply to Aruba. As part of the provisional package of national ordinances, so the first eerste tranche, a number of treaties will be implemented. That's a good thing. But the first question to be asked is whether the core principles of common good, as interpreted by Aruba, are already embedded in that treaty itself. Otherwise, you get sort of double work or things are going to conflict. At the same time, and that's also of importance, treaties often allow for what we call in English national discretion in their implementation. Ruimte. And so you can make choices at the level of Aruba, not at the treaty as a whole, as the headlines, but in the specification in this case for Aruba. And well, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. Let us return, finally, to Descartes, René Descartes, and his famous words. He used Latin, of course, in that time. Cogito, ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. Ik denk, dus ik ben. Ik besta. Especially in the field of legislation, and I mean legislation that is meant for the whole community, we must continue to think, to question, and to reflect, so that our laws are both responsible and just. And as Descartes reminds us, true reflection also means continually asking whether we are still on the right path. Of course, at a certain stage, you have to come to the conclusion, okay, we think we are on the right path, otherwise things stop and nothing gets done. That's not what I mean to say. That responsibility that rests not only with those who draft legislation, but also with those who commission it. In Nederlands, die de opdracht geven voor de wetgeving. That the appeal that emanates from the common good is a powerful and lasting appeal to all of us. Therefore, Prime Minister Eman, I am convinced that the community of Aruba as a whole will move ahead. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Timmers. Next, we will have two speakers. And it is my honor to introduce both. Meester Dr. Jan Peter Balkenende is a Dutch jurist former Prime Minister of the Netherlands, and a leading voice on governance, sustainability, and values-based economics. He served as Prime Minister from 2002 to 2010, leading 4 successive cabinets and guiding major reforms in public services, social policy, and economic resilience. He is Professor Emeritus of Governance, Institutions, and Internationalization at Erasmus University, Rotterdam, and serves as External Senior Advisor to EY. He is the Chairman of the Dutch Sustainable Growth Coalition, the Chairman of the Nober Foundation, and a member of the World Leadership Alliance, Club de Madrid. As co-author of Capitalism Reconnected, Toward a Sustainable, Inclusive, and Innovative Market Economy in Europe, he advocates for an economy and society anchored in reciprocity, stewardship, and shared purpose, with a renewed focus on sustainability and the common good. Professor Dr. Govert Buys is a professor of philosophy at Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam, where his work spans political, social, and economic philosophy, focusing on how markets, morality, and civil society shape human flourishing. He studied political science, philosophy, and theology, and has held chairs in political philosophy and societal renewal. His research explores the role of religion, ethics, and values in public life, and how communities and economies can be organized around human dignity and the common good. He has collaborated with Ad Verbrugge and others on influential works on philosophy, society, and markets. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to introduce Meester Dr. Jan-Peter Balkenende, as well as Professor Dr. Govert Buys.
Prime Minister Eeman, Prime Minister of St. Martin, Your Excellencies, speakers, ladies and gentlemen, it is great to be here. And I want to thank you, Mike Eeman, to organize this fantastic conference, The Common Good. Because this is about quality of life and our future. Therefore, it's necessary. And in a remarkable year, 2026, 40 years after the start of the separate states of Aruba. Great. You think you're walking around? Yes, I'm walking around, and that has to do with the following. All speakers were here with the flag of Aruba. But here is the flag of the Netherlands. So I thought it's maybe good to stand here, that in any case, now you have the possibility to make a picture of the flag of the Netherlands. Dear friends, it's always nice to receive a book. I hope you can agree. A rather moderate reaction. And let me tell you what happened to me when I had my farewell dinner with the Christian Democrats, members of the cabinet, when I stopped as Prime Minister in 2010. All cabinet members offered me a book. And of course, there must be a reason to give a book. And one book I received was the book of Michael Sandel, Justice, What's the Right Thing to Do? And I received a book from Ernst Rijsbalin, the Minister of Justice, and of course there's a reason for it, because the last chapter in your book was Justice and the Common Good. And last week, I gave a presentation for many civil servants in The Hague, and had to do with the preparations for the presidency of the Netherlands of the EU in 2029. And I received, as a thank, 2 books. The first was of Pierre Rosanvallon. He's a famous French historian and philosopher. And he was writing about democracy, and he was concerned. And then he spoke about communality and the essence of serving the common good. That was his message. And the other book was of Ezra Klein and Thomas Derrickson, that has the title Abundance, and that's of course about how can we build a better future. I was happy with these books. You can derive inspiration from books, but also from people. Yesterday I had a very long flight, almost 11 hours, and of course you're tired. And it was so nice, Mike, you received me at the airport, and directly we went here to the expo. And I must say, I have enjoyed the meetings of all these societal initiatives here in Aruba. Fantastic people, and this was about serving society. So you can derive inspiration from books, but also from the fantastic people here. And I really enjoyed it. Thanks for the inspiration. I think inspiration is necessary in a time that you can see there are a lot of developments that are worrying. We see the upcoming of autocrats all over the world. Yes, today we've been speaking about the rule of law, but more and more it's about the rule of the strongest. We have concerns about inequality in the world. You can see the upcoming of populism. All these developments are there. And then the question is, of course, what about hope in society? And in my view, hope is always connected with values and communities. Let me make some remarks about that. Values. Mike, you've known Amitai Etzioni, a famous thinker about communities, a professor in communitarism. And he wrote a book, and you know that book, The New Golden Rule. And it's a rule you can find in almost all religions. Treat others as you want to be treated by others. It's a fantastic rule. This year is 250 years after Adam Smith, the famous founder of modern economic thinking, wrote his book, The Wealth of Nations. But 17 years before he wrote that book, he wrote another book, The Theory of Moral Sentiments. Today we've been talking about religion. Let me mention the social teaching of the Roman Catholic Church. That's about human dignity, personalism, solidarity and subsidiarity. And the World Council of Churches years ago spoke about the concept of a responsible society. I'm a big defender of the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. And the basic idea, the basic value behind all these goals are leave no one behind. The encyclical Laudato Si of the late Pope Francis, Laudato Si, has the wording, he considers our planet as our common home. And it's remarkable, Mike, that you here talk now in terms of the home we built together. Again, the home is a beautiful wording. And maybe you know the name of Peter Drucker, a famous economist. And years ago he said, responsibility must be the guiding principle in the knowledge century of the 21st century. Values. I think values are key, and as Prime Minister always underlined the essence of values. And besides that, communities. Not so long ago, I heard a presentation of a woman from the United States, and he was doing research on relations and relationships. And she underlined the importance of good relations because she said this has to do with quality of societies, it has to do with health, with well-being of people. Relations are always key. And this morning we had a fantastic presentation for the civil society. You need a well-functioning civil society. I have a colleague, an economist in the Netherlands, and he's always saying, when you talk about economic theory, it's always about transactions. But he says it should be about relations. When I was a student, of course, I heard about the Keynesian approach and the new classical approach, but I also heard there's also the institutional economics. Institutional economics, and I underlined the word institutions. It has been done by other speakers as well. One of my favorite books is Why Nations Fail. Do you know that book? It's written by two Nobel Prize winners in economics, Acemoglu and Robinson. A beautiful book. It's the result of 15 years research, 3,000-year world history on one question: when are countries successful and when not? I think it's a fascinating question. And the answer is very clear. If you want to be successful, you must be innovative, because if you think things are going well and you're not changing, you can forget it. Innovation. 2, you must have the rule of law, because it has no use to be profitable if there's corruption or a bad legal system, the rule of law. And 3, and I underline that, you must have inclusive institutions, meaning that people must be able to share in the revenues of economic well-being, and not only the elites. I think these insights are very important when you think about the issues of today, when you think about democracy, when you think about society, when you think about the economy. And let me give you some examples. Of course, I'm interested in discussion on capitalism. And what happened during the last years? If you were in Davos at the World Economic Forum, the discussions about stakeholder capitalism, not only shareholders capitalism, stakeholder capitalism. There's a movement in the United States that's called conscious capitalism. Joseph Stiglitz, Nobel Prize winner in economics, he wrote a book about progressive capitalism. And there's a global organization called the Co-Roundtable for Moral Capitalism. Different wordings, but in fact it's about 3 key components. 1, always invest in long-term thinking and long-term strategies. So beyond the short-termism. 2, always serve all stakeholders and not only the shareholders. And 3, there must be the right balance between economic, social and ecological developments. I'm happy with this approach. But what do we see recently? If you are in the United States, you're not allowed to talk about the ESG criteria for doing investments, environment, social and governance. You can better not use the word sustainability. So the idea of stakeholder capitalism is under pressure. Second example. I had a fantastic life. I'm happy with the world of academia and politics and the business sector. So after my time in politics, I became partner corporate responsibility at EY. Corporate responsibility. And what I noticed in those days, people said, companies have to serve society. Companies must integrate sustainability into business models. And we saw new business leaders, and I was hopeful. Because businesses have a social responsibility. I believe in that concept. Not so long ago, I attended a company in the Netherlands, and it was fantastic. They used electric vehicles. They were bringing down CO2 emissions. They had fair labor conditions, a very sustainable company. And then I asked them, what's the title of your strategy? And then they said, serve to win. Serve. The word has been mentioned today. I think serving as a company is really key. But what do we see? More and more short-termism, talking about financial results, and I think it's important that we talk about the social responsibility of companies. And then democracy. It's really fantastic that we've seen, during the last centuries, the upcoming of democracies. That people can unite, that people can have political parties, that you can express your views. But we also see books the last years, the end of democracies, how democracies die. We see sometimes there's a gap between political institutions and people. People are not satisfied with results of democracies, and upcoming of populism. That's what you can see in today's world. And I'm concerned about those developments. And why I'm concerned? Because if we do not have an economic organization, responsible capitalism, that serves society, if companies are supposed to serve the interests of only the shareholders, if people do not trust democracies, then we have huge difficulties, and that has to do with the fact of trust in society. I always like the book of Francis Fukuyama, written in 1995, Trust. And in those days he said, high trust economies, high trust societies, high trust companies are performing much better than low trust economies, low trust societies, and low trust companies. The fact that trust is really key. And when you're watching what's happening in the world, you can see sometimes a lack of trust, and that's something that worries us. And that brings me to the book Govert Buyse and I have written, Capitalism Reconnected. Why did we write this book? In discussions Govert and I had, we said there are in fact 3 very important discussions and we should think about that. The first is, what about the position of Europe? We have to rethink the position of Europe because everything is changing. Today, Europe sometimes is a battlefield between the superpowers, the US and China. Rethink the position of Europe. 2, think about the position of people. Do they believe in democracies? What to do with the disconnect between politicians and people? Second point. And the third point is, what about the future of our economy? And we say it should be responsible capitalism. That's our view. And we said these 3 subjects should be considered in an integral way. You must have a broader view on those different developments, so try to have a view on the future, and it's not only about Europe, it's of course going beyond. I'm happy that we've done it. We had many discussions, we spoke with a lot of people, with NGOs, with young people, young economists, etc. It was also the fruit of the right discussions. And when we were writing our book, we said, if you want to have this view on the future, it has to do with values. And we mentioned 4 values in our book. The first is human dignity. The second is inclusivity. I've mentioned the word inclusive institutions. The third is regenerativity or circularity. Think about the natural resources on our planet. And the fourth is co-creation. These are the 4 key values we're using. And in our approach, it's necessary that if you have such a view on the future, in fact, you need all actors. This is not only a story for economists or for governments or civil society organizations or for creative thinkers. You need, in fact, everyone. That's a bit our vision. So Govert has been a fantastic journey with you to write the book, to think about it, to talk with people, because this is also about inspiration, having a concrete view on the future. I'm talking about Europe, but also it's relevant for you as well. But Mike, when we have written the book, you directly showed your interest in the book and the approach. I think this is really important. I have to take into account the time. I already have 11 minutes. That's not so good for you, so you have only 9. Yeah, sorry. Once I gave a presentation in the neighborhood of Schiphol Airport. There were a lot of people, 1,000 people. It was fantastic, a nice hall, music, great moderator. And the technician, your colleagues, he put on the headset on my head and put the battery on my belt. And when he put the battery on my belt, he said, Mr. Balkenende, the battery will work for 20 minutes. And then your time is over. That's also a solution. And a second solution, never give a glass of water to a speaker. Govert, it's your turn now. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Jan-Peter. And yeah, for me as well, great to be here. Well, I need less than because you have already told quite a lot about our book, so I need much less than the 10 minutes or 9 minutes or 8 minutes. And you will have your turn at the end of my speech as well. So there are still a couple of minutes reserved for you too. So again. Yeah, let me just briefly, bon tardi, by the way, for all of you. And let me briefly guide you a little bit through the book that we have written, and I hope that this works. Yeah, this was, you can see, there was an avalanche of books about capitalism, the reorientation of capitalism. Jan-Peter mentioned that already. And our idea was, well, 2 things actually. I heard Jan-Peter giving a speech like this in 2019, I think it was. And I think, are you ever going to write this down? Because this needs to be written down. He said, well, I don't know whether I really am up to it or whether I really want to do this because I've been former prime minister and all these kind of things. And well, and they say, well, why couldn't you have done so before? All these, so kind of, he was hesitant. I said, well, if we now make this into a kind of consultation process with young economists, with business people, with NGOs, with political parties, with famous economists. And then we collect this and then give a kind of perspective that comes out of all the various other perspectives. That is not just Jan-Peter Balkenende or Govert Buys, but no, see that this is the discussion that is going on right now, and this, how can we organize this, understand this discussion? So, and that convinced Jan-Peter Balkenende, and so we embarked on this process together. Has been a very nice process, but you see, there's a lot of work is done, and yet. What we came across, and that I think is, well, what we, when we eventually wrote this book, by the way, is freely downloadable, so we don't have any profit ideas or whatever. You can freely download it, and then you can read it. But what we try to do is say, well, what you do not see in a lot of these reorientation, renewal of capitalism literature, it can be quite idealistic. And what we discovered that is important, our book is, you can say, organized around 3 figures. This is figure 1. And we call this the thorny triangle. And the thorny triangle is that you say, well, we need to reorient our economy. Yeah? It has to become more ecological, more sustainable. It has to become more social. Yeah? There is always this rising inequality that we see in the world. You could say not in the global level, but within countries you see in a lot of countries rising inequality and therefore precariousness, people who are really kind of losing out on the modern, on the current developments. So the economy needs innovation, reorientation of the economy. However, you can do that and make this into a kind of elitist project. But what is important is that you kind of are really kind of connecting to the population. And therefore, we call this the democratic legitimacy. See your society as a covenant in which you are really together with all the different layers and all the different people there. This is about this inclusivity. So you have to be very much aware that saying, okay, the reorientation of the economy does not become a kind of elitist project, but becomes really something of everybody together. And you have to be aware of the geopolitical issues there. And that has been increasingly important while we were working on the book, with the rise of China, of course, the war in Ukraine taking place, you could say the BRICS countries coming up, the whole United States playing an entire different role now than earlier. So that's the geopolitical positioning that you have to be very much aware of. And how can you, in this thorny triangle, how can you find your way? Well, that is, I think, is very important. What we came up is say the key values that and Jan-Peter mentioned them already, very important as orientation point, both as orientation and as inspiration. That you say, okay, what is really important for us in our future economy? And there we came indeed with these 4 terms. Human dignity, which has a long history in the development of humanity, has often been embattled and yet has been articulated in very different religious traditions as well. Inclusivity, indeed, it has to do with you have to bring various people together, to keep them together if you are going to do a lot of economic innovation, that it is not just for the few, but is there for everybody. Regenerativity, that has to do with nature. We have to build our economy in such a way that nature can regenerate itself and is not exploited, but is treated in such a way that it can constantly, and nature has a strong capability, power of renewal, but it can be destroyed, yes? And that's where we have to be very careful, regenerativity. And it needs creativity. And now we are often talking about creativity in terms of individual creativity. Yeah, the great leader, the great the Elon Musk type of persons, yes? But even Elon Musk cannot do anything if there are not other people around him doing things together with him. So creativity in itself is meaningless. It's co-creativity, together. Your creativity, and then coming together. And I think this is our, if we want to call it an inherent definition of the common good, then I think these 4 values are very important for us. The second graphic that we used, looks like 5 pillars. There's not the 5 pillars of Islam in this respect, but 5 pillars of economic renewal, and I will put them down in a little bit different order, then you can read it as well. You have to think anew about our ideals, yes? What is the purpose of an economy? Why do we have an economy, actually? Is the purpose of an economy GDP growth? Yeah? And a lot of economists have defended that position. We say, well, no. It should be something like human flourishing, human well-being, the good life for everybody. And then the question is, of course, can you measure that? And that is the 4th point, and I will take this now already immediately, indicators. There's a lot of interesting work has been done in recent years about finding indicators for human flourishing, human well-being. How is a society really doing? And you can look in your phones, the OECD Better Life Index. And if you are bored with a story, then you go there and you can then play with it. So they have 11 indicators. Say, well, and what is important there? Education, health, social cohesion, education, I mentioned already, ecological performance of a society. And so there are 11 indicators, and then you say, well, okay, then a society is doing well. And you can then put your own emphasis on saying, well, I find health more important than ecological, or I find education more important than profitability. You can play with it, and then you can see how different countries are doing. Very interesting, but as well you can have indicators. At the same, that is, you can say on the macro level, but you see something similar on the level of companies. And there have been a lot of new systems of what is called integrated reporting, in which you do not simply say, oh, this company is doing well because the profits are okay. No, apart from profits, you can say as well, what is the social impact of a company? What is the ecological impact of a company? And is it really contributing to a better society? Is it really contributing to a better environment? Yes, so, and that's why we need as well other indicators. And I mentioned just one more thing of these 5 points. You cannot do everything, but that is the economic ideas. Yes, we have been educating our economists and business people very much with the idea that indeed everything is about profit and about maximizing money, so to say, getting rich. Yes, that is a very poor idea of what economics really is and what a business really is. And if you read Adam Smith, the father of economics, indeed, what was already mentioned, you find a very different perspective there. Yeah, and that economics really is the science of cooperation, of people coming together and working together with their own talents, and then coming together and sharing this on a market. The final point of renewal is institutions. And already this was mentioned as well by Jan-Peter. And that's where what we came up with, what we call the multi-actor approach. An economy for the common good is not the creation of any one single actor. We need each other. And we need these very different institutions really to work on ideas. For example, imaginative reflection. Think about a new economy. Yeah, that is necessary. But as well, the communities. Civil society should be involved in it, and there should be a memorandum of understanding between businesses and civil society partners about the common responsibility. For no business can do well in a society that is failing, yes? And therefore there is a common responsibility for having a good society in which businesses can flourish. Nature perhaps should be part of our institutional framework. How? Well, there are various ideas about this. Nature should be at the table. It's important to have that represented. Well, I could go on here, but here the idea is beyond what you can call a stakeholder approach, really a kind of idea of the economy as something we really make together. Well, this is what you really find basically in our book. These 3 graphs, but with a lot of explanation and background of there. And yeah, Jan-Peter, I really will give you the floor for the final words that you can give there.
Second point I would like to make is it is really for Govert and me an honor to be here. People who know me a bit better know that I always like to be here because I like the people. I feel connected with the people in Aruba, and therefore it's so great to be here. And my last remark, and maybe the most important one, I hope you have a great carnival.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We invite Dr. Balkenende to stick around. The last performance is going to be especially for you. We're going to be dancing. To Dr. Balkenende and Dr. Buys, thank you very much for your presentation. Building on this call for a values-driven economy and public life, we now turn to a philosopher who has brought the question of the common good into global public debate. Professor Michael Sando teaches political philosophy at Harvard University. His books on justice, democracy, ethics, meritocracy, and markets have been translated into more than 30 languages. Described as a rock star moralist by the Newsweek and the world's most influential living philosopher by New Statesman, Sandel has recently named the recipient of the 2025 Berggruen Prize, the most prestigious global award for philosophy. Sandel's books, including The Tyranny of Merit, Can We Find the Common Good, Democracy's Discontent, and What Money Can't Buy, show the limits of a purely market-driven society and point the way to a new politics of the common good. Sandel's legendary course, Justice, was Harvard's first to be made freely available online and has been viewed by tens of millions of people, including me. His global lectures have packed such venues as St. Paul's Cathedral in London, the Sydney Opera House in Australia, the Delacorte Theatre in New York's Central Park, and an outdoor stadium in Seoul in South Korea, where 14,000 came to hear him speak. We are truly honored to have him with us today, so please put your hands together for Professor Michael Sandel.
Thank you. What an honor it is to be here. Prime Minister Eamon and distinguished speakers and guests for this conference on the common good. My assignment is to speak as a philosopher of the common good. But I'd like to begin speaking as a father and as a coach of youth baseball. When our son was 9, 10, 11, 12 years old, I coached his youth baseball team. And I learned lessons about the common good. Baseball, in many ways, is a highly individualistic sport. And the greatest praise and rewards, especially at that age, go to those very few kids who can hit a home run. But I noticed that even teams who had a few kids who could hit the occasional home run didn't necessarily win. Because what kids struggle with in playing baseball is defense, catching the ball. And more often than not, when the ball comes in the air or on the ground, it goes through the legs or over the head of the child who's trying to catch it. So I told my players that the rewards would not go to an individual who hit a home run. I wanted them to get in the habit of backing up teammates. If the ball came to them, just assume that your teammate might not catch it and stand behind him or her and see if you can back up a teammate and make an out. And whoever achieves that, I said, will lead the entire team to be rewarded, and the reward was a Snickers bar for every player on the team. That's a pretty compelling reward. And the young players soon developed the habit of backing up their teammates. And one day, someone backing up a teammate caught the ball that had gone through the legs of a teammate, threw to first base, and made an out. And the whole team got Snickers. And developing that habit actually led our team to win the championship. Even though we didn't have that many kids who could hit home runs, we won the championship. Now, there are two morals of this story, as I understand it. One of them is that cultivating teamwork is successful in achieving a goal, winning games. And that's good. But what these young people also learned was even more important than the games we won, because what they learned was a certain attitude, a certain way of being together as a team, which has value, and I think they absorbed that value independent of the trophies they all got when we won the championship, and even when all the Snickers had been devoured. There's a lesson in this, maybe, about the common good being partly about policies that achieve a goal, but also about cultivating a certain way of life, a way of living together. One of the challenges, one of the threats in contemporary life to this way of living together, according to the common good, is posed by certain uses of markets and market incentives. Markets as a way of allocating access to goods and social practices. I would like to put to you one example of the use of markets to allocate access to a good, and I want to see what you think. And I'd like to have a discussion here. Are you ready to join in a discussion? Okay, we have microphones, we have runners, and I think they're spread out around the hall. A year or two ago, Disney World instituted a way of dealing with the fact that in the popular rides, there are very long lines and long waits, sometimes 2 hours long, to get on your favorite ride. They established what they call lightning lanes, premium lightning lanes, where you can go to the head of the line provided you pay a premium. How much do you think it costs? What would you guess? Well, what, $5? It's $449 per person per day. That's the lightning lane. Now, first let's take a poll, show of hands. How many find the lightning lane at Disney World to be morally objectionable, and how many think it's okay? It's a use of the market to allocate access to a ride at an amusement park. Are you ready for the vote? How many find it objectionable? Raise your hands. And how many don't find it objectionable? Find it a legitimate use of the market? All right, we have a division of opinion in the room. Let's first hear from someone who finds it objectionable. What exactly is the objection? Who will start us off and tell us? Just put your hand up and we'll find you. We'll get you a microphone. Especially, I'd like to hear, are there some students here who have views? Okay, yes, you find it objectionable. And tell us your name so everyone can hear.
My name is Lex de Jong.
Yeah.
I would consider myself a healthcare system activist,
Yes.
although I don't glue myself to hospitals. But
Right.
so I would say it's not in good standing because the people in line
Yes.
who have been waiting, they don't know how many people will take their spots, for example.
They
So
don't know, but suppose there's a sign that warns them that
There will be 10 people ahead of you.
the lightning lane will lead you to have a longer wait than you may expect. Then it would be okay?
Well, if it's clear
Yes.
beforehand
Right.
what you can expect, as we have a lightning lane, so it's not just half an hour waiting before you, but another 2 minutes on average because of the lightning
Yes.
lane. If the information is clear beforehand, then I might be okay with it.
Okay,
Or if it says, because we have the lightning lane, everybody gets a Snickers while waiting, for example, that would be acceptable.
You'd,
Maybe.
you'd like
But-
that better. That would be more humane, and they could use some of that money to pay for the Snickers. But the objection really is you don't like the people to be surprised when suddenly it's a longer wait than they expected. All right, thank you for that. Who else has an objection? Who objects even if the people are, everybody knows about this system in advance? Who would still object? Yes.
Yes.
And
My
tell-
name's Lisha.
Yes.
And I would object mostly because you separate, you segregate, the people coming to the park.
Yes.
And it's kind of inaccessible for everyone because not everyone has $449 to pay
Right.
for that. So
Right.
it's kind of saying the elite and the ones that are financially
Right.
better set, they have priority over the others.
They do have priority, and you think that's objectionable because it's unfair, and also you said because it kind of separates people
Yes,
from different backgrounds.
It fragments actually the people coming to the park because some
Right.
get other treatment than
Right.
others.
Right. Some get better. The VIPs, the Lightning Lane customers, are separated from the ordinary customers in the park. All right, let's see if there's someone now. Thank you for that. Let's see if there's someone who does not find it objectionable, who has a reply to this worry about segregating or segmenting or fragmenting people by class in an amusement park. What would be your reply? Who will defend the Lightning Lane and can respond? Yes, go ahead.
A society is based on solidarity.
Yes?
So if you take away solidarity, it's the law of the richest, the law of the most powerful.
Okay, so you also don't like the Lightning Lane.
Well, I think, yes.
Because it's at odds with solidarity.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So you're of the same view as the previous speaker. Thank you for that. Let's hear from someone who will defend the Lightning Lane, who thinks there's nothing wrong with it. It's paying extra for
Here I am.
quicker service.
I would go into the lane for a couple of reasons.
Yes?
First of all, I would do it to help the ones that cannot pay because they have one less. And second, we live in a society where the one who have more money is always paying for the one who has less. So
Yes.
there's nothing different there. And if you have the money, why not?
So if you have the money, why not take advantage of it? And if you get through quicker than the people behind you, well, they won't get there sooner than they would if you didn't cut in front of them, though.
No,
Would-
the ones that are not paying
Yes.
have one less in their queue.
One less in their queue, yeah, but your queue gets in ahead of theirs.
That's right. That's the good part.
That's the good part for you.
Yes.
Yeah. All right. All right. So you like the idea.
Yes, but
if
that's,
you have,
that's the society we live in. The ones
Okay.
who have are paying for the ones who have less.
okay, so it can be said that that's the society we're living in. Let me shift the example in a way that illustrates this to healthcare. Now, in Aruba, you have universal health care. In the US, unfortunately, we don't. And we have some approximation, but it's a very uneven approximation of health care, and it's still the subject of dispute. But there are now concierge medical practices, as they're called, where you can pay extra beyond what health insurance normally covers. You pay extra, and you get an appointment with your doctor on the very day you call, You get your doctor's cell phone number if you need to call him or her at any hour of the day, and quick access to specialists. Concierge medical practice. It's a kind of lightning lane to see the doctor. Let's take a vote on this one. How many find concierge medical practice objectionable? Raise your hands. And how many don't? How many think it's payment for faster service like anything else or many other things in our society? Yes, those of you who are okay with concierge medical practice, who would like to speak in defense of it? Yes, back there. Who will speak up? Who hasn't yet spoken? Yes? No, we're going to someone who hasn't yet spoken. I'm sorry. Who has not yet spoken on concierge medical practice who would defend it? Over here.
Hi, my name is Kishore Karnani. Well,
Yes.
I 5 years ago had a heart surgery.
Yeah.
So I could speak about having the possibility to have quick health care. And it's unfortunate because the way society has been made is that, you know, you need to be able to have enough money to at least, where health care is concerned, to be able to pay for it. In many countries, like in the United States, if you didn't have an insurance, in Aruba we are lucky, and we have, as you would say, everybody has SVB and AZV, and we can all
Yes.
have wonderful health care. We are very blessed. The good thing about it is that it's a fair table, and it's first come, then you get your appointment, and no one's treated, you know, without equality.
Right, in the Aruba system.
Correct.
But what about in the concierge system, the
where-
lightning lane?
That's what I'm coming to. So in the United States, because of course I was diagnosed with heart disease, and I was lucky, fortunate that I had another insurance policy of United Healthcare of the United States.
Yeah.
And I was able to get a quick appointment because of insurance. I wish everyone could have the same, but it isn't like that. So I believe that for having that urgency, because
Yeah.
it's health, it's
Right.
a life and death
Right.
situation, I see it's different than Disney World, where it's a game, it's an amusement. The kids are crying because they are waiting in the hot sun.
Right.
But when it comes to healthcare, I feel it's unfair. But if you have worked hard and you have saved for your healthcare, which is what everybody does as we get old,
Yes.
I feel it's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay, and you
If
got
you're-
faster
Yeah,
treatment
it's
for
okay
your heart
because-
condition.
Yes, and
Okay,
you're blessed.
thank you for that. Is there anyone who disagrees and would like to reply? Yes.
Hi, my name is Gary. For me, it's a good example of sometimes maybe the services not being fully optimized or to have enough people to meet the demand. So if you're not using the money for the concierge system to improve the system for the local, for the less fortunate as well,
Right.
then you're just exploiting the system to give privilege to others. So that's
Okay.
how I see it.
All right, so that's a worry about the inequality that
Yeah.
can be reflected. So we've got, let me see if I can draw together the discussion we've had, but before I do that, I want to thank everyone who's joined in the discussion on these questions, on the lightning lane. We heard one set of objections having to do with inequality and the unfairness of access, quicker access to the rides or to medical care. We heard another argument that there's a difference maybe between allocating access to the rides at an amusement park and allocating access to life-saving medical care. And that argument suggests that beyond the question of equality and inequality and privilege, unfair privilege, is something about the character of the goods and social practices making a difference as to when money and markets are appropriate and when they are not. Building on this second objection, looking at the character of the social practice and the attitudes toward the social practice reflected when money is introduced, I want to give you an example of a dilemma that was confronting a Swiss town, a small town in the mountains of Switzerland some years ago. The government of Switzerland was trying to determine where to place nuclear waste sites. No community wants one in its backyard. And they identified as likely the safest place for this nuclear waste site, a small town in the mountains of Switzerland. But under the law, the town had to agree. So before the final decision was made, a survey was done of the residents of this Swiss town, and they were asked, if the government decides that this town is the safest place to store the nuclear waste, would you vote to accept that decision, that waste site? 51% said yes. Then the survey takers, the economists, sweetened the deal. They said, suppose your town is chosen and the government offers to pay every resident of the town a yearly fee for the inconvenience and for the risk of up to $8,000 per person per year. Then would you vote to accept it? What percentage do you think were willing to accept that offer? 80? Other guesses? 70? 90? It was 25%. 25%. When the money was offered, fewer, not more people, were willing to accept the nuclear waste site and to vote to accept it. Now, this, in a way, it's a counterintuitive result. Normally, when you offer people money to accept some burden, they're more willing, not less willing, to accept that burden. So what was going on here? What do you think was going on? What could explain this result? Well, it could be that when people responded to the first question, they were without the money. They were responding out of a sense of civic responsibility. The nuclear waste has to go somewhere, and if this is the safest place, we are willing to make that sacrifice. But when money entered the picture, and people were asked afterwards, why did you vote against it, those who turned against the plan, what they said was, we didn't want to be bribed. Now, what did they mean? We didn't want to be bribed. They didn't want to sell out for money the risk, the security of their family. They were willing to make that sacrifice out of a sense of civic responsibility and civic virtue, but not if this was a financial transaction, a deal, which suggests that sometimes when money and market incentives enter social life, they change the meaning of, in this case, a decision, a willingness to sacrifice, which suggests that money can crowd out sentiments of civic virtue and the common good. One of the most corrosive effects of the widening inequalities of income and wealth in recent decades has been the separation of societies between rich and poor. This was the worry that was raised earlier about the Lightning Lane at Disneyland, separating the experience of going to an amusement park. I mentioned baseball. When I was a kid, I would go to baseball games in Minnesota. I grew up in the Midwest. And in those days, there wasn't that much difference in the price of a box seat and a seat in the bleachers. And as a result, going to a baseball game was a class mixing experience. Everyone had to eat the same soggy hot dogs and drink the same stale beer and wait in the same long lines for the restrooms. And when it rained, everyone got wet. But then, beginning in the 90s and into the 2000s, they established in most sports stadia and arenas VIP skyboxes, where those who were affluent corporate VIPs could sit in air-conditioned comfort high above the stands with the common folk below. And this fragmented and changed the class mixing experience of rooting for the home team. And I suppose it wouldn't matter very much if this only happened in sports stadia. But what's happened is that this separation within our societies has been taking place throughout our social life. Those who are affluent and those who are of modest means increasingly live separate lives. We live and work and shop and play in different places. We send our kids to different schools. I call it the skyboxification of life. Now, democracy does not require perfect equality. But what it does require is that people from different walks of life, from different backgrounds, encounter one another in the course of their everyday lives. And this requires that there be public spaces and common places that gather us together in the course of our day. Public parks where children from all class backgrounds gather and play. Municipal swimming pools, cultural centers, public libraries, public schools. These public places and common spaces matter not only because they provide services for everyone regardless of the ability to pay, that's important, but also because they gather us together in a shared encounter of democratic citizenship. We've been discussing policies and institutions that can promote or undermine the common good. But the common good is not only a matter of policies and institutions. It has also to do with cultivating habits of the heart, attitudes, like the attitudes of those kids who learned on the team to play as part of a team. In Aruba, I've learned that each year, more than 2,000 people donate blood for transfusion. And it's unpaid, as it is in most European countries. In the United States, you can either donate blood or you can sell it for pay. A market supplementing voluntary donation. A sociologist some years ago studied and compared the US system with the British system, where there is only voluntary donation, and found that the supply of blood, the efficiency of the system, and the quality of blood was better when it could only be donated, not sold. And this raises the same kind of puzzle, I suppose, as that Swiss nuclear waste site survey. An economist, a famous Nobel economist, wrote a critical review of the book of the sociologist who came up with that finding. The sociologist spoke of the gift relationship involved in donating blood. The economist said, "This is irrational. It's irrational because if you simply give people a choice whether to donate blood or to sell it, people can still donate it who want to. So why would it diminish the supply of blood? Why wouldn't the bought and sold portion of blood simply add to the total? What this economist missed was that commercializing blood, like commercializing other aspects of social life, changes its meaning, the meaning of donating it in this case. The economist was also puzzled because he argued that ethical behavior is a commodity that needs to be economized. We should not rely too heavily, he wrote, on generosity, solidarity, or civic duty, because these moral sentiments are scarce resources that are depleted with use. Markets, on the other hand, which rely on self-interest, he argued, spare us from using up the limited supply of virtue. Like many economists, he wrote, I don't want to rely too heavily on substituting ethics for self-interest. I think it best, on the whole, that the requirement of ethical behavior be confined to those circumstances where we can't use the price system, because we don't want to use up recklessly the scarce sources of altruistic motivation. Now, this raises a question. Is the economist right that the supply of generosity and civic virtue is fixed as if by nature, like the supply of fossil fuels, such that the more we use, the less we have? Or are civic virtue and generosity more like renewable energy? To someone not trained in orthodox economics, this way of thinking about the generous virtues as being a commodity in short supply seems strange. It ignores the possibility that our capacity for love and benevolence is not depleted with use, but enlarged with practice. Think of a loving couple. If over the lifetime they asked little of one another in hopes of hoarding their love, how well would they fare? Wouldn't their love deepen rather than diminish the more they called upon it? Would they really do better to treat one another most of the time in calculating fashion so as to conserve their love for the times they really needed it? Similar questions can be asked about social solidarity and civic virtue. Should we try to conserve civic virtue by telling citizens to go shopping until their country really needs them? Or does civic virtue and public spirit atrophy with disuse? The economistic view of virtue fuels the faith in markets and propels their reach into places where they don't belong. But that metaphor is misleading. Generosity, solidarity, civic spirit, these are not commodities that are depleted with use. They're more like muscles that develop and grow stronger with exercise. What I've learned in this, our first visit to Aruba, is that this small island can be an experiment for the world in developing and exercising our civic muscles. It can be a laboratory in promoting the common good. Thank you all very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Sandel. I'm going to immediately call you to come back to the stage as well as the other speakers. Please join me back to the stage. Dr. Robertico Cruz, Mr. Tim Timmers, also join us back on stage. Dr. Jan-Peter Balkenende, please join us. And Professor Sandel, please join us on the seats here. Dr. Buys as well, so that we can have our Q&A session. And then I'll ask the runners to be active and aware in the group. And this time I will not leave you hanging. Yes, you'll be the first one. So the runners, can you have the first question is going to be to this young lady in the front? And then I'll ask the backstage for the microphones of each of the presenters. Please take a seat. Yes, thank you. So as soon as I have the first runner, follow me right here in front. Jillian, everybody has the microphone in front here. I need a runner right here.
Yes, hello, thank you. My name is Lisha once again. And it's kind of the same question I had last time. So.
Oh, there you go.
The question is related to, well, the question is, what abilities does an individual need to put the common good into practice? And we were talking about attitudes in the last speaker's session, and I think of this theory called the Inner Development Guide. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that, but where they have these set of competencies and abilities an individual needs to be able to put vision into action. And my question is then related to that. What abilities do you think we as individuals need to be able to put the common good into practice? And the follow-up would be, how can we educate these abilities, and not to the youth and through education to the younger generations coming up, but to the ones that will need to educate this? So we talked about the context of home environments, the context of education, so teachers, but role models, people in the professional field, etc.
Who dares?
There are many ways of trying to inculcate civic virtue. Most of them require a certain kind of social practice and civic life. But to take one very concrete example, one of the greatest threats to the cultivation of civic virtue today is that young people spend enormous amounts of time staring at their screens. And nothing good will come of that, not for learning, and certainly not for the cultivation of the common good. So I think that we should consider the attempt in Australia to ban the use of social media for young people under 16. I wouldn't stop with 16. I would try to go as high as possible, maybe to 74, 75 years old, if possible. And then beyond that, to try to change the business model that gives these social media companies an incentive to feed outrage and anger as a way of keeping people engaged. So they say, engaged is a terrible euphemism for simply giving up your personal data over long periods of time so they can sell you stuff. So I would also ban the use of targeted digital online advertising and force these companies to fund their operations in a different way. What would you think?
Let me give a few examples. What's happened in the Netherlands? Once there was a primary public school, and that school became a sustainable school, so solar panels isolation. And the teacher said this should not only be a technical project, it should also be an educational project about sustainability. So they started talking with the kids, what do you see with all the changes? Oh yes, solar panels, etc. Then the next question was, and why are we doing this? And then they started talking about climate change, etc. And the next question was, and what does it mean for you personally, in your behavior, not throwing away food, not using energy if not needed? I like that because it was a practical approach and I've seen the results with these kids. Another example, we had a CEO of a University of Applied Science, a director. He said, my intention is that all students at the University of Applied Science in the Netherlands, they should learn about SDGs. That was his dream. And now you can see at all those universities, students have to learn about it, and then they have an assignment with groups of 9 or 10 students, and they have to develop a product, an idea for a service that would be in line with the SDGs. It's fantastic. I've seen the results. And the third one is, and I stop, KLM, you know, the air carrier. They want to focus more on sustainability, and they invited people with teams to to come forward with ideas, concrete proposals, and then the CEO said, of the board said, we will take it over, and if not, we will explain why it's not possible. I think these things clarify that it's possible to change the other things, but you must be practical, taking right actions, and you can really change it. Therefore, I mentioned these examples.
Thank you. Next question. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I would like to add a different perspective. In my speech, I talked about that the common good is a function of use and practice. But if you remember what I said, it is not under all circumstances because we cannot crowd out, you know, individual motivation. It is very, very critical. Otherwise, there is no co-creation. Okay? So my vision and my perspective is more that sometimes common good has to be aligned with the context, with the circumstance. I'll give you an example what I mean by that. If I'm driving a car and I see Professor Sanders, I will yield to him for him, you know, to go through. Then I see Dr. Balkenende, you can go through. But the third person, I say, wait a minute, I need to get on time. I'm sorry. I cannot yield for you because I have to move on. Because otherwise, I will jeopardize other situations or my own self-interest. So what I'm trying to say is that we have to be very careful how we, you know, look at common good. It is not only a moral thing, but also things that are practical, choices that are reasonable, that make me safer, that make me also see that my sacrifice is common sense. So that's very critical, and we can put it in different contexts and different circumstances. So I see it more as, you know, that at sometimes under certain circumstances it can be completely nonlinear instead of just practicing common good all the time. I have to think about myself too. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Hello. Good afternoon. My name is Elizabeth Pope. And first and foremost, I would like to thank you, each and every one of the panel members, for your very eloquent presentations on this very important topic. It's not in as much a question, but a suggestion. And the suggestion is, and I'm referring specifically to Professor Sandel, when you said that we can use the situation in Aruba, the common good circumstance of Aruba, as an example for the rest of the world. But I would like to suggest not only to our own Prime Minister, but also to you, the speakers, why not make it a blueprint for the rest of the world instead of just an example?
Thank you very much. Yes?
Hi. Hi, my name is Sulima, and I'm the director of a nursing home organization on the island. So the conversation about the common good, I live it daily because you take care of a vulnerable group that is perceived to not have societal value. So we as a nation have to decide how we are gonna take care of them. So I appreciate the day, and I also appreciate that we have this conversation. I have a question about the fact that we philosophized a lot today about this concept, but I'm more interested in practical knowledge. So my question is not specifically for anyone, but I would like to know who we can look to currently as a good example of an island, nation, whatever you want to call it, that is practicing the common good at a level that we philosophized at today.
I think you're completely right when you say it's about practical consequence. You can talk about values, about common good, but what is really happening? Let me give a concrete example from my experience as Prime Minister. When I did my work, I always underlined the importance of values in society. And people laughed about me. Oh, you won't go back to the 50s. And I said, no, it's about having respect, showing respect towards others. We need values in society. So what happened in The Hague was criticized. But people in cities, in schools, sports organizations, they understood. And what happened, the world of schools, they start with the Day of Respect for all the pupils. And they learned from it. It was a beautiful example. Sports organizations, they organized also a tournament, and it had to do with values. You could receive points by being very active in sports, but also doing good for society. And I can give many of those examples. So I would like to underline, it is about practical consequences. You have to think about it. You need the concept, but also what can be changed. And I'm active in the business sector. I do not like companies that say, we are a sustainable company. The question is, what are you doing? Are you transparent about the results? This is what it's all about. And that's what you mentioned. Integrated reporting is an example. It's a tool to be transparent about your achievements. And we need this type of honesty. So the point you're making is completely right. It's a matter of the combination of having ideals, views, values, and at the same moment be practical and show results. And if you're not able to show results, then you get difficulties. Last remark, Herman Van Rompuy, the former President of the European Council, he always said, if you talk about Europe, it should be Europe of results. You have to show results, and that can convince people. So I agree with your remark. Great remark.
But I wonder who is doing a good job.
May I ask a question back to you?
Sure.
You are in elderly care, you told me, huh?
Yes.
Yes. Do you involve school children?
We try to.
Yeah.
We actually host 2 schools on our location to motivate that intergenerational connection.
Because I think that is really the way forward, that you kind of are not saying, well, here we have one isolated initiative and there's another isolated initiative, that you bridge these initiatives, bring this together, so that it is this kind, yeah, we say in Dutch, an inktvlekwerking. It goes from one to the other. And that, I think, is the only way that is maybe as well a response to the blueprint question, that you say, well, okay, you can make a nice drawing out of that idea of a blueprint, but it is a process. That you really make connections toward each other. And I think what was yesterday here It was very important, I think, this expo, that you say as well, people, show yourself. Do not, there is in the Bible something, your left hand should not be know what your right hand doing. I think in civil society it should be the other way around. You should really know, say, show and say, okay, this is what I'm doing. And can I connect? Yes, please, join us. And can you see something else? Well, what can we do together? I saw many examples of that too yesterday, I think. That was very impressive. I think that's exactly the way you should highlight these things.
Yeah. Okay. And a final remark, because we talked about screen time and it's a problem for the children, I do want to point out that it is the previous generation that allowed this. So the common good should also be kept in mind when we develop technology, because now the same generation that made this happen is now complaining about it. It's just a remark.
I'm going to have one last final question to the lady in the first table right here. I'm very, very sorry. I just have time for one more question. First table, all the way in front here. First table, please do not get angry at me. The time is staring at me. One last question.
Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Paula Giraldo, and I have a question or a worry like a mother of two. How can we get to the common good, like me, like a mother, when in the educational system of right now, we can see that you can talk about gender ideology, open sexuality. You can talk about a lot of topics that sometimes they are not adequate for the age of the children. But you can talk about God openly, the values, the traditional values that we pretend to defend are, like you say, old school values, and it's like a war between the traditional way of thinking and the new generation that everywhere you can see. When you go to you see a movie, you can see that the values that you want to care about in your small home, like a family, is like a war between what you value and what all the system is promoting, and how we can go to the common good as parents and educational institution to get there and feel this in the same way, with the same focus and the same vision. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. I've been in education for 25 years right now in higher education, and it's, you know, you teach skills, competencies, and you try as an educator to make the student as critical as possible for the student to make his or her own choice based on his own background. So we are different, coming from different backgrounds, religion, ethnicity, gender, etc. So I'm not saying that education is value-free, but we have to be very careful, especially when you build curriculum and the future based on the focus on jobs and the type of jobs that you need based on the SDGs, and also trying to serve society by shaping this individual as a good citizen, and by respecting the differences. So what I'm trying to say is a curriculum with a lot of values. I may not agree with you in terms of how you have been brought up at home, because I'm different, I have a different religion or whatever. But the thing is that I would like, through the competencies and skills that education can bring to you provides you the freedom to choose the possibilities that you value in your life and in your context as a human being. And I think that's at least what I have practiced in the past 25 years. I give you critical questions, and you make those choices based on, the empirical evidence, based on your knowledge, based on your experience at home, on the streets, and so on. And hopefully that you will turn into a good citizens that we can do things together. Because at the end of the journey as a human being, it's about flourishing, and you flourish by doing things together, which means that our identity and how we bind ourselves to a common good is by doing things. That's identity. That is how I think that I can, see myself in a group of people, because we do things together that have the value for me as a person, and hopefully it has value for you as well to have a meaningful life.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And with that, we conclude the Q&A session for the afternoon session. We'd like to thank all panel members, Dr. Cruz, Mr. Timmers, Dr. Balcanende, Professor Sandel, and Dr. Baez as well. Please join us back into the audience. Thank you for your time in answering the questions. I know there are more questions and we can continue the conversation for hours and hours, but we do have to continue with the program. We'll now continue with the second part of this afternoon session, Aruba Common Good in Action. Please take a moment to watch the following testimonial videos as local voices share the common good in action right here in Aruba. Your attention
Nos, di familia di Divina Aruba, è sumamente orgulloso di aportar na bom causa di comunidad de Aruba.
Y en el momento aquí nos está más o menos unas 750 mucho kutahayan ng desayuno todo dia di escola.
E felicidade com a minha filha, me explica é impagável, so não happiness, também happiness.
Sempre nos teve muito na.
Me te quer é algo hopi importante back para sobre ya botinho bisa é parte de comunitarismo a manicai tiki, no? Então nós me bem back com essa aqui onde nos por ajuda sem pensar riba e que comi por haya a cambio.
Todo dia nós está abrindo amor na 125 mucha de jaluna para chegar na hora de escola. À tarde nós temos muita não, de hora que nós chega, nós waknang, nós está recebendo com amor e alegria e assim também duna nang inspirar nang para nanta melhor pessoa para assim na hora que nós vira grande nanta me quer de emissão de nós de junto para criar uma melhor comunidade.
Como compañía, nos es sumamente orgulloso también por desplegar todo lo que nos está haciendo Bon Común, pero también por reconocido de identidad de María Ajata. Camina con nosotros reconocido Ajata Impact Awards, que básicamente galardonanos para que nos donacionan y que nos contribuyen a Bon Común para la comunidad de Aruba.
Recientemente nos gana un Impact Award que de Ajata. Lo cual que está encerrada nos tem Helping Hearts and Hands, é fundo que nós tem members está drag bijna je, entre DT members, party members.
Segundo que conhecemos para nossa comunidade, nós estar assim bonita obra de cumpleañero contento, onde nós tem dias se prende muito, que nós se prepara e prende goodie bags para nós, tem bolo para nós, regalo, e nós assim nada mais contento, ora nós chegamos na casa, nós canta happy birthday para nós, dona nós regalo, nós bolo, e assim queremos que ajuda dona muito nós, de menos recursos, também para celebrar nosso cumpleaños.
Nós está companhia que dá drive para propósito. Não quer men que você revenue é importante, para se você conseguir crescer, pero nós está pensando que se nós ponemos empregados na MEI, na experiência, eu vou trabalhar isso é resultado onde nós turco crescer junto.
We really start to function and to work as a community, and nature is our teacher in that. So nature tells us this Sosaka tree can grow on its own, but it doesn't mind a little shade from a papaya tree above it. So you have certain trees that are pioneers, and that's also in our society. We need pioneers, but we also need plants that go together and that support each other. And I think that's super important to understand in nature how the system works, but also how our communities work, and that we need each other to do even better.
Nós ta sigi kere de bom comum pasina nós bota parte de nosso dever.
Parte de Fundação Chico Harms, me está muito contente, orgulhoso de formar parte de Common Good. Junto com a Fundação Bernardina Grovel, para nós por abrir aqui, para lagasar com Common Good da traha. O turista e com o nosso ministro Hendrik e sua crew, nós fazemos bonito trabalho para fazer a casa de nossa mama de cultura, Bernardina Grovel, em paz descanse. Eu estou muito contente, muito orgulhoso que está aqui. Está aqui não somente verf, mas em curto tempo vou poder mirar com amistade, amor, outro aderente entre nossa Fundação Bernardina e Sandy Bar Brasil.
I had a great time yesterday. It was fun to do. I don't get to paint very often, which was nice, and it was a great feeling to be able to do something for the Aruban people in general. I volunteer back at home in New Jersey, so volunteering is one of the things I like to do. And this was a good experience. It was only half a day, but it was good to do. Felt good.
Let's have a round of applause for these individuals, these local individuals, and may they inspire us to reflect on our own role and what we can do in our communities as well. Before I introduce our next speaker, may I just give a heads up to the companies where we're going to be signing the MOU after this presentation. So please join us backstage. The representatives of Save More Supermarkets, Aruba Bank, Aruba Wine and Dine, Horacio Odiber Hospital, Eagle, Aruba Resort, Jolly Holding, Pepe Margo, and Bukuti and Tara Beach Resort. The representatives, please join us backstage so we can get ready for the MOU signage. Our next speaker turns our attention to our shared responsibility for our common home, Aruba's natural environment. Frangelle Laclay is a policy advisor to the Prime Minister of Aruba for the Nature and Environment portfolio. She holds an MSc in Environment and Resource Management from Vrije Universiteit Amsterdam and is a PhD candidate in Earth and Environmental Sciences at KU Leuven, as well as a lecturer at the University of Aruba. Her doctoral research examined social innovation in small island social ecological systems with case studies in Aruba as well as in Bonaire. An islander from Aruba, her work focuses on environmental governance in tourism-dependent island context. She previously worked with ecosystem service valuation consultancies and with the international development organizations, including the United Nations Development Program and the World Bank, on programs involving small island developing states and disaster risk reduction in the Caribbean region. Today, Frangelle will connect the concept of the common good to our common home, our environment, and our natural spaces, and consider how small islands like Aruba navigate both challenges and opportunities toward more nature-inclusive development. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Frangelle Laclay.
Buon tardi. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to start today from a global perspective before moving on to zooming into the island. Our natural world does not recognize borders, markets, or governments. The natural world behaves not as we have put the borders as humans. Pollution upstream in one country affects a river downstream in another country, and a carbon emissions in one place contributes to global warming everywhere. However, we live in a world where our economies are still largely driven by one dominant economic model of economic growth, mass production, and continuous market expansion, with, however, a flawed assumption at its base. And this flawed assumption is that these natural resources are finite or sometimes replaceable. The result of this is that we have a deepening ecological crisis globally and also a deepening social inequality. This is a study by the Stockholm Resilience Center on Planetary Boundaries. This is from 2005, and as you can see, some of these systems that support life as our human life are being surpassed. There's many progress that has been made. For example, we have managed to close the gap in our ozone layer. There's much commitment by governments for climate change. However, there's still work to be done. The reason for this is that our economic model does not account for the costs of the external costs to mass production. And so a lot of social and ecological impacts are not accounted for in our systems. And this is also why sustainability in the last decades has become more and more prominent. And as ex-Prime Minister Balkenende has shared, the Sustainable Development Goals is on the international agenda. So the question is no longer actually whether growth has certain limits. The question is, how do we organize our economy better? So let's zoom into Aruba. As eloquently shared by Dr. Robertico Cruz, Aruba has had a trajectory of very successful tourism. At the moment, we receive about 10 times our population on the island, but this has also led to a lot of urbanization, and actually urbanization that has doubled only in 4 decades. This also means that we experience a lot of pressure on our systems, not only our nature, but also our infrastructure, on our water system, our energy system, our housing system. And because of this, also we are all here today to reflect on our development pathway. My PhD research is on social innovation in small island social ecological systems. This basically means that I research how citizens in society organize themselves when they want to voice for nature. And I'll briefly share just one finding. There's a lot of organizations on Aruba. These are just a few. And actually, they've been voicing themselves for some time, but their voice has remained at the margins because economic growth is still important and was the primary driver of our development. But in this reflection, and if we're trying to understand also common good, we also have to understand how do we understand our common home and what are these voices that are at the margins at the moment. And they have for decades shared their concerns of the social and ecological impacts that we experience today. Or as I heard from Dr. Robertico Cruz, that tourism actually is an unforgiving mirror at some point. And this is where we are today. Some experiences that are being felt in our society and shared by these voices at the margins are a sense of loss of public beach access because of overcrowding and because there's less space or less sense of place for the locals. A loss of habitat and biodiversity also for our own very special species, such as the national bird, the Prikichi, and the national symbol, the Shoko. But this also brings a looming threat of a loss of sense of place and a loss of our common home. So right now, as a policy advisor and as civil servants in the Ministry of Environment and Nature, what do we need to do? We need to engage more with different types of stakeholders and listen, and this is what we are doing. We are now working on strengthening the environmental enforcement on the island, not just by through criminal law, but also simplifying administrative pathways so that action can be taken faster. We are also working on how to incorporate a legislation for environmental impact assessment on the island. And what is very important as policymakers as well is that we need to learn how to enter these conversations that are not always easy. So we need to learn how to collaborate, we need to learn how to negotiate in conflict situations, and we need to break silos, meaning we have to collaborate with the NGOs, the private sector, academia, in order to make this common good a reality. Another thing is the designing of projects where we have stakeholders involved. And I'll give one example of such a project that we're working on where we aim to have both social and ecological benefits on the island. The National Reforestation Program. Through an extensive stakeholder engagement process, we arrived at the aim of this project, which is not only an ecological focus, but also social benefits. So we are working on reforestation both in the rural, but also urban green infrastructure. A lot of the feedback was the necessity to see also or bring back native species and naturalized species. And so you can read here some of the sub-aims of this project. To plant 100,000 native and naturalized trees within 4 years, to achieve at least 70% survival of these within 15 years, but also to cultivate broad community. We don't want to do this project only by the government, but engaging a lot with community and stakeholders. And so, for example, we are working with schools, the SPO, for nurseries, and we are working within neighborhoods to ask neighborhoods what types of species or benefits do you want from trees in your neighborhood? Do you want fruit trees, or would you like a design where it contributes to noise reduction in your neighborhood? This also requires interministerial support and effort. So it's not only the environmental portfolio that is involved. We need legislation, spatial planning, agriculture, education. And so one of the ways that we are collaborating also is with the private sector, where we have started an initiative where the private sector can adopt a plot and help us realize this goal. And later on in today's program, you will see a couple of very wonderful organizations that are contributing to this goal. I think the clicker is not working. Okay. So this is a study done by Wageningen. It was also a large stakeholder consultation process. Households, representative population and households were involved. And so you can see 2 examples of Aruba, the rural part. So here, the feedback was the wish to see more native vegetation. So here we have, of course, a lot of these parts are managed by Aruba Conservation Foundation, where they will do projects that are more focused really on restoration within those areas. And then in the urban area, there are different initiatives or interventions that the community asks for, such as urban pocket parks, which we are also working on with the Minister of Infrastructure, agroforestry project in schools, etc. So all of these, depending on the area, it can be tailored to the benefits that are being asked in that area. And so to briefly conclude this before we move to the wonderful organizations is we are aiming to move towards from a pathway that is now moving towards imbalance or at the crossroads of that to one where we choose projects for regeneration on the island. And so that the impact that humans have actually has a positive impact rather than a pressure or leading towards degradation. And so we are restoring Aruba, and we hope to develop more and co-design such projects more with stakeholders and all of the NGOs here present. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Franciel. Earlier this morning, we witnessed the signing of Memoranda of Understanding focused on collaboration within our neighborhoods. This afternoon's signing is different. It continues that series as part of Aruba's effort to fortify collaboration within our community for nature-inclusive development. The first MOU this afternoon formalizes collaboration between key partners working to align tourism development with environmental stewardship. To mark this historic moment, I invite His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Aruba, Mr. Mike Eamon, to join us on stage, as well as His Excellency, the Minister of Tourism, Transport, and Labor, Mr. Wendrick Cecilia. Please join us on stage. And please join me in welcoming to the stage a warm round of applause for the CCO of Aruba Conservation Foundation, Mrs. Natasha Silva, and also a round of applause for the CEO of the Aruba Tourism Authority, Mrs. Ronella Cruz. And to give you a background on the MOU that's going to be signed, this is part of a 3-year agreement between ACF and the Aruba Tourism Authority. This agreement is about collective responsibility, it's about managing human-induced impacts, and it's about preserving what's left and restoring what has been lost. Through this collaboration, we will work on 3 very concrete fronts. First, investment in visitor infrastructure that helps guide people through nature in a way that protects sensitive areas and supports responsible access. Second, collaboration on conservation itself, which includes the creation of Aruba's first Marine Conservation Center, which will be managed by the ACF. This center will be grounded in science, focused on education, and restoring marine biodiversity in long-term ecosystem health. Yep. And third, a joint effort to increase public awareness through genuine and impactful campaigning, as long-term protection depends on responsible behavior towards nature, when in nature, and beyond. Signed and sealed. Thank you very much. Perhaps we can have a photo opportunity together with the document, and the 4 individuals. Can you please stand together so that we can take a photo? In front of the table, please. Please step in front of the table. Thank you very much. Prime Minister Amon, Minister Cecilia, CEO of the Aruba Tourism Authority, Ronela Cruz, and the CCO of the Aruba Conservation Foundation, Natasha Silva. The next signage moment is part of Aruba's National Reforestation Program, as earlier presented by Ms. Frangelle Laclay, which aims to fortify Aruba's socio-ecological system with reforestation and urban green infrastructure. To mark this historic moment, I invite once more, I'm sorry, His Excellency, you were just about to sit down, the Prime Minister. Please join me back on stage. Good exercise for you today. As well as His Excellency, the Minister of Infrastructure, Housing, Internal Affairs, and Telecommunications, Mr. Rene Herday, please join us on stage as well. And join me with a warm round of applause for the following organizations who are committing to adopting a plot as a Sembra Esperanza partner for reforestation and urban greening. They are Save More Supermarkets and VEI, Aruba Bank, Aruba Wine and Dine Holding, Horacio Odiber Hospital, Eagle Aruba Resort, Jolly Holding, Pepe Margo, and Bukuti and Tara Beach Resort. A countdown for the sign? Yes, thank you very much. If we can step in front for a photo. Congratulations to these companies for adopting a plot, Siembra Speranza. Can just step in front of the table, please. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, this conference has been shaped by his leadership and commitment to the common good, and we are grateful for his vision. But we are, of course, eager to hear his reflections on these past 2 days and the path ahead. So here to provide the closing address, and I will ask you to step on stage again, His Excellency, the Prime Minister of Aruba, Mr. Mike Amon.
Buon tardi. My friends, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a very special day for us all. And it all started yesterday when our hearts were warmed by the participation of more than 50 organizations in our community that dedicate their life, dedicate their free time, dedicate their hours that they could spend for other preoccupation to serve the community. I would like a hand of applause for these 50 organizations in our community. When we announced this very important Congress, very important convention, I would call, we mentioned that we were assured that the common good already lives in Aruba. And these 50 organizations proved to us yesterday that not only does the common good live in Aruba, but the common good is promising and the common good is strong, so that in the next couple of years, indeed, we can be the blueprint for the common good for the world. And today we were inspired by many speakers, and I would like to thank them one by one, because each of them, from a different angle, from a different perspective, inspired us to think, pass on the message of today, so that when we leave this hall, everything that we heard, all the aspects that can contribute to the common good, we can carry out and share with the community of Aruba. So let's start with Mr. Ian McGilchrist, that did an effort to be online with us. If you clap a little bit harder, he might hear us in Scotland. So I would also like to thank Mr. Ad Verbrugge, Professor Ad Verbrugge, who enlightened us with philosophy, showed us that we have an important challenge in balancing out our economic model that we have as based on tourism with creating a community that can serve the common good. Thank you very much, Mr. Verbrugge, for that enlightening and very important moment that you shared with us that really gives us something to hold to. Thank you very much. I also would like to thank Mr. Professor Jelle van Baardewijk. He also inspired us, gave us much to think about. The history of the common good goes back all the way to Aristotle, and during the last centuries have been influenced by different schools of thoughts. Very important is the Catholic influence, but also very important are the modern philosophers that broaden the spectrum of what the common good means and how each one of us can contribute to the common good. So, Jelle, thank you very much for coming all the way to Aruba and share your knowledge with us. Very important for Aruba is that in this endeavor, we can create a special relationship within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. And we had present here also the Prime Minister of St. Martin. I would like to ask a hand of applause for the Prime Minister of St. Martin. Minister Boekhout of Curaçao. Thank you, Minister Boekhout, for being present. And in order to create a bridge over a much larger body of sea, we had here present Mr. Jan Peter Balkenende, the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands. Norms and values, Mr. Jan Peter Balkenende made trendy again as Harry Potter in the Netherlands. Hands of applause. Having the former Prime Minister of the Netherlands in Aruba at this occasion is not only important because of the past function that he had as Prime Minister, but Mr. Jan Peter Balkenende still carries the very noble task of inspiring countries all over the world to look at new opportunities to create stronger societies where solidarity, where we are all inspired and asked and appealed to look at our neighbors and see that we have a responsibility with someone that is in need. So, Mr. Jan Peter Balkenende, thank you for being a compass for norms and values in the kingdom and in the world. Thank you very much. Accompanying former Prime Minister Balkenende is the co-writer of Capitalism Reconnected, Mr. Covert Buys. When I first read the book, I had the privilege of the confidence of Mr. Jan Peter Balkenende some time ago to receive the manuscript before it was published. I don't know if he was open for me to comment before it was published, but in any case, he shared it with me, and already then we saw that this publication would really reinforce the contemplation, reinforce the reflection on the common good and how we can naturally reconnect capitalism with good values in our society. So, Covert, thank you very much also for your contribution. Thank you. We also listen today with much attention to our own Robertico Cruz, professor at the University in Florida. It is for a small island like Aruba, it is naturally something to be very proud of. A Aruban that is a professor at a very large, prestigious university in Florida. But it's not just a professor. Many publications are the product of Tico's contribution to very important thoughts about where we have to take the tourism industry in the future so that it could be sustainable and really having the fruits for every citizen and certainly for everyone that makes tourism a success. Tico has enlightened every tourism board, not only in Aruba, but also in the Caribbean, to think about how we can make tourism sustainable, tourism that really serves the communities where tourism is thriving. So Tico, thank you very much for your inspiring leadership on making the tourism industry more sustainable. We also heard of our own Esther Emerencia. Don't see where Esther is. Hand of applause for Esther. Esther stood under a special pressure today, and many of you might not know, but when we held our first Green Conference, I was visiting the university. She was a student, and I spotted talent, and we wanted young voices to also carry the Green Conference. So I asked Esther if she wanted to be a speaker at the Green Conference where Vice President Al Gore was the keynote speaker. No pressure for Esther, but she didn't do less than Vice President Gore that time, and today again, she impressed us all. Esther, thank you very much. Almost today, I already thought that she had a PhD when I listened to Thais Franken, or another local talent. Thank you very, very much, Thais. Thais is an important new light in the University of Aruba, while Mr. Luke Alos, we all respect, is taking a leave of absence or a pension. He looked around. His shoes are quite large to fill. Luke Alos has contributed a lot to the history of Aruba, to the culture, the anthropology of Aruba, and at the university, he spotted Thais Franken, and he has all the confidence that she can carry the responsibilities that he used to carry at the university. That says a lot. So Thais, thank you. We had, I'm very proud to say, an advisor in my cabinet of the Bureau of the Minister President, Francielle Laclay, who doesn't only have the heart for nature, but she also has the capacity, the intellectual capacity, the talent to make every part of the challenges that we face with nature under pressure, some part of her thinking and some part of new policies that she helps us prepare, which is a guarantee that we will recover a good part of the nature we lost over the last couple of decades. And certainly, Francielle, and I must mention Nadine, are going to take care of many, many proposals. And today, a lot of the MOU signing was thanks to their efforts and very convincing arguments toward the private sector that they should also be involved in the reforestation of Aruba. So thank you, Francielle, thank you. Nadine. And I don't think I'm going to miss anyone, but I'm going to now close with the other keynote speaker we had here today, whom many came here also to listen to, Professor Michael Sandel. Professor, when I mentioned to academic friends around the world that we succeeded in attracting you, we felt a lot of jealousy because you have been quite difficult to have in other countries lately. You don't travel as much as you used to, but you still accepted the invitation of Aruba to come and share your knowledge with us. And we are very humbled by that. And thank you very much. And also, Mrs. Sandel, thank you very much. It was extremely enlightening. And we hope it's not going to be the last time. My friends, during the different presentations we had these days, many of us sat here with the knowledge that one of the preoccupations we have in our country is that we have indeed beautiful GDP numbers. We have indeed beautiful tourism growth numbers. We have indeed beautiful occupation of our hotels and other resort areas in Aruba. However, when we look around on our island, when we visit our neighborhoods, we speak to our citizens, we feel that we have an important challenge in ensuring that the wealth that we see in these macroeconomic numbers also really reach our households so that we can have a community that can really share in the prosperity of our country. When we speak about common good, we're talking about shared flourishing. In order to guarantee shared flourishing, money indeed is not everything. But money for many of our citizens living below the subsistence level is a daily preoccupation. When you cannot pay your water bill, you cannot pay your electricity bill, when you are concerned if you have clothing, new clothing for your boys or girls to go to school, that is a serious problem, and it is a challenge we have in Aruba. So I'm extremely, extremely proud that I can inform you today that yesterday, based on a letter, Minister Wendy Cecilia and I sent to the Sociaal-Economische Raad, that is the Social Economic Council of Aruba, where we asked them an advice that the government would wish that in the next 3 years we could increase the minimum wage at the level of the subsistence level in Aruba. And at this moment, the difference between the subsistence level and the minimum wage is 500 guilders. So every month, a person that only has one wage, minimum wage, doesn't have a living wage. And we want a living wage for every citizen, minimum a living wage for every citizen in Aruba. And we're extremely, extremely happy that we received the report advice of the Socio-Economic Council yesterday, in which they gave us a positive advice in order for us to walk this up. Naturally, they would not have been the Socio-Economic Council, or the Raad, the SER, if they didn't say, ja, maar, but those mars, those yes buts, are all achievable. Mostly the advice is that the 3 years, or the phases in which we will try to achieve this, that we enter into a dialogue with the employers and employees organization, and we are determined to do that. And then hopefully in a couple of weeks, we can sign off on this very important path that will be part of the structural purchasing power strengthening policy of the government of Aruba. So thank you to the Sociaal-Economische Raad. I saw Mr. Bijlhout somewhere in here. Thank you, my colleague Wendrik Cecilia. Thank you to my colleague ministers that agreed when we sent the letter. I especially look at my Minister of Finance, Economic Affairs, because he always has to also look at the other interests in order to keep businesses viable in Aruba, but with the heart in the right place, also approved that we made this request to Social Economic Senate. So Geoffrey, also thank you to you. Thank you. Friends, in the harbor of Aruba, right behind us, 100 meters probably from where we are standing here, there is a large cruise ship. And if you notice the name of the cruise ship, it says Renaissance. And we are here today on a renaissance of the common good. We are here today in a convention center named Renaissance. So I must believe that this means something very prophetic, that we are here in a moment of renaissance of the common good, a moment of renaissance for commitment for a better quality of life for our own citizens. And it didn't used to be like that, where you see those two cruise ships standing. There used to be only what we call a schoenersteiger. Aruba was not connected to the world. At that time, the colonial council in Curacao, when we requested to have Mr. Larmoni, close your ears for the next 15 minutes. Mr. Larmoni is the leader of the PPN and PNP in Curacao. Thank you also for your presence. Thank you. We used to be part of a central government system, and for every small improvement for the conditions in Aruba, we used to have to request the colonial council in Curacao for the most small things we need to. And even when we look at the changes that our people were requesting, so very often they were so logic, they were so justified, but it was a big challenge in the colonial system. And this small steiger, pier, our people at that time, the leaders of Aruba, the citizens of Aruba, wished it to be expanded. They wished to have a large harbor so we could connect Aruba to the world. However, the response that came was, we have a big harbor in Curacao, so we will receive the steamships and we will send those schooner boats to Aruba in order so you can take care of your freight. Naturally, this was an enormous limitation for import and export. Aruba had many needs. There was a lot of poverty in Aruba. Very dry island. Very often we had seasons of a lot of drought, a lot of children that passed away during those droughts in the 1900s. So our citizens were really concerned and wanted to change the quality of life of our citizens. And this was Aruba in the 1900s. This is the coastline of Oranjestad. And among the people that expressed their concern and wanted to change, there was an important moment that this was some things that they envisioned, naturally not that large at that moment, but definitely that was the connection that they wanted to see that Aruba could have in order to create a better quality of life of our citizens. And it was an important moment in the history of Aruba for the design of the harbor, and an important leader stood up. And today I would like, when we speak about the common good, to connect the dots. Because I would not be standing here motivated, inspired, and with a sense of responsibility, if it doesn't come from many generations before me, that at crucial moments looked at Aruba, looked at the needs of our people, and felt that we needed to stand up, we needed to fight, we needed to struggle in order to create a better life for our citizens. Cornelis Hendrik Eman is my great-grandfather, and he used to live in Nassaustraat in 1900 at the beginning of this street, right at that point. And what he saw around him, what he heard every day, was people in need, people having an enormous challenge just to make the daily life that they wanted for their family. And he was motivated, he was inspired, and from his position as a person that took care of import and export in Aruba, he saw daily the need for a harbor for Aruba. He worked tirelessly from just a private sector position, but at some point in his own life, he got an enormous setback. In 1898, it was just a couple of days after his birthday, his wife had just given birth to a new child, and she passed away. And then a couple of days afterwards, the baby also passed away. And that was part of life in Aruba because of the medical conditions, because of the hygiene, the water quality in Aruba. We didn't have water communication systems in Aruba. He was very sad, and he felt very pessimistic and was very depressed. But he was loved. So his friends told him, you have a task in this world. You have been there always for your citizens, and you have always showed compassion. You should be a representative of the community of Aruba. So he, with the support of the people of Rancho, because living in Oranjestad, very close to Rancho, like 100 meters also from Rancho, he very often voiced the need for better harbors, for better cooling conditions for the fish of the people of Rancho. With their support, he was elected in 1900 in what we call the Raad van Politie. At that time, the only council, representative council, that Aruba had, and in that council, basically, their authority was to write a request, write a proposal for a budget for Aruba, which at the end would be decided upon in the council of the Colony Council in Curacao. In his function, he fought very hard in order to get a better position for the harbor of Aruba. He fought very hard to improve the education in Aruba. He fought very hard to improve the conditions of the people in Aruba in all ways. And in the years that he was in that parliament, he filed motions after motions in order to secure that the Aruban people could have a better quality of life. He became very ill in 1914. He was still a very young man, and at that moment, when he became very ill, he took a boat, he went to Curacao. From Curacao, he took a steamship and he went to New York. And from New York, he wrote to his children, and basically, this is what I would like to share with you here today. I will read first in Dutch, then I will translate in English. Mijn innige geliefde kinderen, uw papoe gaat donderdag, misschien morgen, naar New York om daar misschien gevaarlijke operatie te ondergaan. Hij hoopt en vertrouwt dat de goede God hem gezond en sterk voor u zal laten terugkomen. Maar het kan ook gebeuren dat hij onder of aan de operatie bezwijkt. Hij zendt u daarom vooruit hier zijn vaderlijke zegen. Hij vertrouwt dat u allen tot rechtschapen en waarheidslievenden mannen en vrouwen zullen opgroeien. Papoe heeft veel met Mahinda, dat is zijn echtgenote, over u allen gesproken. Hij vertrouwt dat Mahinda bij bijstand van beide familie de plaats van Papoe zal bekleden totdat u allen groot zijn geworden. U kunt niet deze afscheidsbrief niet begrijpen, maar Mahinda zal hem bewaren en als u groot zijn geworden, dan zult u hem zelf kunnen lezen en de wens van vader vernemen. Boven alles, mijn geliefde kinderen, zeg nooit de onwaarheid en wees eerlijk in al uw handelingen met uw medemens. Bemin uw God en vermijd de zonde. Hoor naar de goede raad van uw moeder en van de verdere familieouders. Gedenk steeds aan uw vader die het beste met u allen heeft gemeend en bid den goede vader voor zijn eeuwige rust. Van uw liefhebbende vader. Amen. I will translate. My dearly beloved children, your papoe is going on Thursday, perhaps tomorrow, to New York to undergo a possibly dangerous operation. He hopes and trusts that the good God will let him return to you healthy and strong, but it may also happen that he may succumb during or as a result of the operation. Therefore, he sends you in advance his fatherly blessing. He trusts that you will all grow up to be upright and truth-loving men and women. Papoe has spoken a great deal with Mahinda about all of you. He trusts that Mahinda, with the help of both families, will take Papoe's place until you have grown up. You cannot understand this farewell letter now, but Mahinda will keep it. And when you are grown up, you will be able to read it yourself and learn your father's wish. Above all, my beloved children, never speak untruth and be honest in all your dealings with your fellow human beings. Love your God and avoid sin. Listen to the good counsel of your mother and of the elders in your family. Always remember your father who meant the best for all of you and to pray the good Father for his eternal rest from your loving eternal Father. And he wrote, papiamento, adiós, Dios suma santa bendición arriba vosotros. Cola sempre, mi consejo nan. Recibi un tierno abrazo y sunci di vosso papustima. Amen. My friends, Mr. Cornelius Aman had a lot of projects. He had a lot of business ideas. He even built a big water tank. He wanted to connect Oranjestad to a pipe system so that people could have clean water. So he had many projects when he got ill. But in his letter, he doesn't speak about business or his projects. He speaks about and asks his children and advises them to become good citizens. Citizens that will hold each other, that will love each other, will respect their mother, respect the elderly. So when we look at what do we need for the common good, we heard that question during this day. I believe that what we need for the common good is what we have to look for in our hearts, in our soul. I'm sure that if we search for the common good in our hearts, in our soul, that whatever moral and spiritual foundation we need to give to our decisions in the private sector or in the public sector, we will find that source in our hearts. Every one of us have it. Maybe we have to search a little bit harder. Maybe we have to move away some other concerns, some other ambitions, but all of us are blessed with our Lord's position to be someone in the community, then can change lives. So today, let's go home with the assurance that we all have what it takes to serve the common good. Thank you. May God bless you. And hopefully, we can take this message outside of Aruba. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Para nós é bom comum, não é um conceito abstrato of uma iniciativa separada, é um pilar importante da forma que nós manejamos o resort e também como nós pensa e opera. É significar reconhecer que nós somos parte de uma comunidade mais grande e que cada decisão que nós fazemos tem um impacto sobre nos gente, nos isla, nos meio ambiente e o futuro de Aruba. Para nós é um compasso moral, mas também prático. É importante para o governo criar condições e oportunidades para assim nós por cooperar com o setor privado e também público, comunidade, e assim o governo por trabalhar junto com nós para nos por servir nos isla. O governo nos por criar um impacto mais grande para nós trabalhar junto.
Prime Minister Ayman, we ask you back on stage as we're going to give out the awards to all the wonderful NGOs and institutions, organizations that joined us throughout the expo yesterday. So as soon as I call you up, please.
One second.
Yep.
I mentioned a lot of people, but I forgot our great moderator. So give her a hand of applause, Ms. Ellis. Please.
Thank you. It was my pleasure to join you. So if you hear your name, Fundación Centro Familia Piedra Plat, please come on down. And Comisión Pro Conuquiero ng Arubiano, please come up on stage and receive this nice recognition. Sunrise City Coconut Collective, please join us on stage. Fundación Zinia, Fundación Telefón pa Juventud Aruba 131, FADA, YMCA Aruba, please join us. Fundación Panos Comunidad, Stichting Yaek Aruba, Club Kibrahacha, Telefón pa Adulto Mayor 125, please join us on stage. Representatives of Fundación Mochila Creativo, llega Trampolin pa Trabaho, Sonrisa, Stichting Ambiente Novo, Sede Aruba, Aruba Animal Shelter, Luna Foundation, FAVI. We also have Living Soil Aruba, Scouting Aruba, Believe in Yourself, Centro de Barrio Norte, please join us on stage. Representatives of Comisión Nacional Intangible, Directie Sociale Zaken, Directie Ouderenzaken, Subi, Stichting ABO, Aruba Bevolking Onderzoek, Parlamento Juvenil Aruba, Plataforma Nacional Gerencia de Esclavitud Aruba, please join us. Please make way as folks are trying to get up there. And we also have Village, Fundación Chico Harms, Kiwanis of San Nicolas. And these are all the names that the organizers were able to spot. If you didn't hear your name and you did participate, please join us on stage. And we're also calling in front the wonderful individuals who joined us with the videos, the testimonials. Senor Flanejing Rambo, if you're still here, please come to the stage. Senora Joraine Audibert from Thrive Foundation, please join us. Rosemary Provence, Fundación Mochila Creativo. Gianaika van der Biesen of Fundación Panos Comunidad, our testimonials. Rose Barros as well, Living Soil Aruba. please join us and receive the recognition. And Miklos Petronia, representative of the Chico Harms Foundation. Please join us on stage. Let's make room for everybody.